Does anyone actually, with their friend's sister, or is that just something you see in movies? If so, what happened? My older brother and I had a party together one time where I ended up sleeping with one of his friends and he spent the night in my bed. He woke up before me in the morning and went to get some water. I heard down the hall some people talking and my brother saying, "Oh, hey, I didn't know you were still here. Where'd you sleep last night?" I just figured the guy would want to be discreet about it, but I hear through the wall, "With your sister." My brother opened my door about 20 minutes later and threw a pillow at me, and we never talked about it again. This is the problem with sisters. Sooner or later, someone is going to sleep with them. Story 2. What if you didn't know it was a guy's sister you were acquaintances with, and the guy actually warmed up to you even more after you had intimacy with his sister? Because this happened. Basically, I knew this guy from around residence at university, and we spoke a few times out in the smoking area, because I was cool like that. Slept with this guy's sister at a party one weekend. She was in the same dorm on the floor above me, and we had flirted and talked a few times. Never once did I hear or put together they were related. Different hair color and look completely. About a day later, this guy comes up to me and asks if I fooled around with so-and-so, and I admit to it, expecting props, if anything. His expression changes to one of reserved anger, as he tells me it was his sister. I start falling over myself, apologizing and saying I had no idea. Did I mention he was also a huge guy? Just then, he cracked a smile and said he was happier it was me than some of the other schmucks at school. He was messing with me. He tells me I have his support, finishes his smoke, and walks away. He sounds like an okay guy. Story 3. The best friend comes from a Mormon family. It doesn't follow it anymore, but his very cute younger sister was still a believer. It was always at uni, and I happened to run into her at the grocery store one day, and we exchanged numbers and agreed to get lunch. After texting her for a couple days, she admitted to me a couple things. First, she admitted that she had always had a crush on me. She then admitted she was going through a wild phase, and she admitted that she wanted to make out with me. I told her I was free pretty much any time I wasn't at work. Fast forward a couple days, and she and I took a shot of vodka on the kitchen table, and we started making out. I then proceeded to do it with her like a screen door all over my house, the couch, the coffee table, my room, against a wall, etc. Literally all we did the rest of the night was consume more alcohol and have intimacy. After that night, we hung out once, and she's gone back to being a good Mormon. My friend has no idea. If he did, he would freaking end me. Story 4. There was a party at my friend's house, and she was there. We were sitting under a blanket on opposite ends of a couch that had been dragged outside. My friend was with his female friend on some chairs opposite. They began to start kissing and doing generally teenage boy things with this girl. They got up and took it inside to his room. Still don't really know what the heck happened, but we kind of looked at each other and just ended up taking various items off. Well, I was not well accustomed to the effects of alcohol, and I fell asleep, and she apparently tried to initiate something, but I was too far gone to respond. We've never spoken about it since. I regret nothing. Story 5. Girl here. I slept with my best friend's older brother. We were at a wedding after party, and he started putting on the moves, so I went with it. Mind you, I'd been nursing a crush for him since age 13. So it was a brother dream come true. Seeing stars and crap. I was quite buzzed, but I do distinctly remember hearing my best friend freaking out when she saw us kissing. It started with, "Oh my god, my brother and my best friend, what the heck? Oh my god." Within a few seconds, it was, "Oh my god, my brother and my best friend." All was well. Wild times ensued. That was around 4 years ago, and I still bring it up to her every now and again just to freak her out. Most recently, blah blah, insert brother's name is getting married in May. That's cool. She can have my seconds. Story 6. I was quietly enjoying a cold bourbon at the hotel I was staying in when my mobile cell rang. I see my come up on screen, and picking it up, I hear the familiar guttural breathing of that big lump. "Hey man, what's up?" Casually ask, and suddenly my ear is ringing from the cheering of the other blokes obviously getting into it and having a few coldies. "Oh, nothing, man. What are you doing for New Year's tonight?" You managed to get through. "Just sitting up here having a quiet drink. Only flew in a couple of days ago, so I don't really make plans." Little did I know that I was about to embark on the wildest, most incredible night of my life. Let's picked up from where I was staying, 2 hours away from Surfer's Paradise. The trip down? So many drinks, laughs, and randomly jumping into the back of other blokes' utility laughing and drinking. Eventually, we made our destination, the old mate Scott's house. As I walked in through the door, I was suddenly hit by someone in a giant hug. I looked down, and there, wrapped around me, was Scott's sister. 5'1", brunette. My eyes widened in surprise, and I managed to stammer, "Sophie? Is that you?" She looked up at me with those big, gorgeous green eyes and smiled. "Yep, how you been, man?" I was shocked. "I haven't seen you since you were like 9. Holy crap, you grew up hot." She laughed, and I was sure that was something she heard a lot. After the usual pleasantries, I begged my leave and went and jumped into the downstairs shower. After showering for a few minutes, I heard the door suddenly open and I turned to drop a witty insult to the would-be perpetrator, until I noticed it was Sophie. Hi there. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. Just thought we should catch up. To which I hastily replied, well, in or out, expecting her to shut the door and come back later, right up to the point that she climbed into the shower with me. So began a wonderful, sexy long weekend at my mate's place with his sister. There's more to this story, but I can wait for another time. Tell us. Story 7. Not quite, but in high school, a friend of mine and I were at a kid's house who had an extremely attractive older sister. We were all getting intoxicated and playing beer pong, and my friend and I were on a roll. After winning like 10 games in a row or something, his sister and her equally attractive friend decided to raise the stakes. We live in the mountains and there was snow on the ground, so the bet was as follows. If we lost, we had to run around the house with barely any clothing. If they lost, they had to make out with each other for 20 seconds. Anyways, best 20 seconds of my early high school career. Story 8. Yes, one of my best friends, who happens to be gay, had his family come visit sophomore year of college. His sister, who we all had met the summer before, partied with us both nights. Was able to sneak away with her twice without him ever finding out about it. I made up some lie about needing to get my wallet out of my car, and she came with me. What made it better was how we had been joking with him since the summer about how one of us was going to fool around with her, and how angry he got at the idea. To this day, he doesn't know it happened, although he may suspect it. Story 9. Here we go. I slept with my old best friend's younger sister. I used to hang out with said friend a lot. Let's call him Todd. We both like video games, the same music, and we met through my ex-girlfriend, though we went to the same school. His sister is 2 years younger than us, and one time at his house, he said, some of my sister's friends are really hot. I agreed, and we kept gaming. Later that night, my friends went to bed, and I was on my laptop on the couch in their basement when Todd's sister and her friend came down and started talking to me. This wasn't the fateful night. That happened almost a year and a half later. Todd was the kind of guy who would say, and if you get there, Arya, we can play together and it'll be great. But then he'd never play with you. I stopped gaming as much, and we drifted apart and made new friends. With new friends, I met another ex who I'd later learned Todd had a crush on. That ex and I were dating for 16 months, and for 14 of those months, I found that Todd would always text her, telling her to break up with me or that he saw me at a restaurant with another girl when I was standing beside her. I'm not normally jealous, and Todd, no offense, didn't have a full soap of scoring with my ex. So when we broke up, Todd texted me saying that he was going to wheel my girlfriend now and how he was going to tell me about the intimacy they had. Before he could even try it, I texted his sister and asked her if she wanted to come watch movies. She got here and I showed her all the DVDs and asked her to pick something out or find something on my computer while I made food. Anyways, 10 minutes into RoboCop, she was whistling me and it all went from there. Oh, poor Todd. Story 10. I have a pretty complete story regarding sleeping with a friend's sister. I have a buddy who I hang out with just about every weekend. The thing was playing beer pong. We were good, and we did it just about every day on the weekend until stupid o'clock in the morning. Well, near the end of one summer, his sister comes to party down with us. I feel that it is very important to paint the picture of what this girl looked like. About 5'6", lots of tattoos, had a look of, I've done way too many substances and now I barely eat. Super amorous, and I was the unfortunate target of her affection pretty quickly. So she admits to me one weekend that she is really into me, and I told her I couldn't because I was honestly seeing someone else at the time. Well, this girl turned out to be the kind of evil and ended up breaking up with me over text messaging. My crappy self decided I felt bad as a result and asked my friend if I could fool around with his sister. I don't know if he was intoxicated or just trusted me more than the average guy, but he gave me permission. About half an hour later, I ended up sleeping with her in the back of my car outside the party. It was fantastic. It went on for way longer than it should have, and unfortunately, just about everybody at the party knew it had happened. So the next night comes around and we were hanging out again, and there are no illusions as to how this party will end for myself and my friend's sister. I found myself on the couch with her the next day. Now 2 days after the first time it happens. And we basically pick up where we left off. Turns out my friend didn't sleep through the intimacy and was pretty freaking angry. Well, we fool around a few more times and we honestly have some pretty fantastic and affectionate dates. This all ends when she decides she wants to sleep with other dudes and I frankly don't give a crap. Skip ahead a few months later and I see an invite to a party that includes an ex. Not just any ex, though. The ex. The girl that you dated and loved but broke your heart at the end of the day due to some BS or another. Well, I asked my friends what the heck is going on, and I found out that she comes to every single party I don't go to. There is nothing I can do, and over the course of a few months, I end up feeling like an outsider in the group. My ex had stolen their friendship, and I no longer felt like a part of the friends I once had. Skip ahead about a year, and I found out that my ex is now dating the friend whose sister I fool around with. It doesn't faze me too much, because I don't consider these guys friends anymore. I ended up asking a friend how it all happened, and I found out that my ex started being invited to parties because I messed with my buddy's sister. What a petty little guy. Story 11. Me and my best friend's sister lost our V-cards to one another. It's actually a really logical storyline that most would have predicted. We went to the same high school. My friends would regularly hang out at my best friend's house and chill or drink, so I became casual friends with her. She started drinking at a young age and getting intoxicated at his house. She'd chill with us a bit or come home at the end of the night intoxicated and hang out a bit. I got off intoxicated a few times to my best friend's utter horror, but his sister was easy. So I wasn't ever the first or the last. He kind of understood, and we always made up. We had a secret relationship, so her overbearing parents and my friend didn't find out. I went off to uni, and when I came back, we went out with a bunch of friends, and at the end of the night, snuck off for a little something. It was good. The relationship ended so badly, I can't actually hear her name without losing a few days of sleep, but I doubt that is because she's my friend's sister. Story 12. My friend who this is about unfortunately knows my username, but this thread was too good to resist. I lost my V card to my best friend's younger sister when I was in high school. I didn't brag about it to him at all. Yeah, when other people found out about it, they took every opportunity to bring it up in front of both of us, resulting in numerous awkward moments. I don't regret it, and I was not the one who initiated it either. It was not like a movie, unless there's a movie out there that shows a really pathetic guy losing his V-card in the grass on the side of a house for a total of 3.5 minutes. Sean, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry too, Sean. Story 13. It wasn't really my good friend, but more of an acquaintance. He fooled around with my sister after I specifically told him not to. A few weeks later, she had a party at his house. We were both on the wrestling team, and they always call his mom, giving me weird looks. She was pretty intoxicated and gave me some signals. I was pretty angry that he slept with my sister, so I went upstairs and gave it to her. I was 20 at the time and continued seeing her for a year until my mom called me when we were out, and she pulled the phone away thinking it was another girl. My mom recognized the voice. Still brings it up to this day. Story 14. Made a throwaway and got out of bed, just for this question. Didn't get as far, but my god, I had so many opportunities to do it. It baffles me how it didn't. I'm in my early 20s, and my maid and I have been friends since around age 10 or so. His younger sister, who at the moment is 18. I once spoke to him about sisters, and he mentioned how he couldn't handle it if one of his friends was with a sister. Anyway, I went over to his house a few times as a kid and never noticed that his sister was paying a lot of attention to me. Skip forward a few years, and our families and a few others were spending time together on holidays, and this was the first time I noticed her and started to realize there was some chemistry there. Skip forward again. High school. She started when I was in year 9 or 10 or something, and we became pretty good friends as we would see each other pretty often, even with the age gap. After a while, she started to make it blatantly obvious she was interested in me, but I never really pursued it because it would have been super weird at school, so I just stuck with flirting. Very strong flirting. Once I finished high school, we kept in touch through Facebook, and after a year or so, she invited me over to watch movies. Now, at this time, she had a boyfriend, and I don't know what the heck I was thinking when I agreed to be alone in the house with my maid's sister when she had a boyfriend. So I drive over there, and we hang out in the lounge room for a while, then I'm laying on her bed while she's getting changed in the bathroom. We head back downstairs to the lounge room. Didn't even end up putting on a movie, as we had heaps of catching up to do, and we were just talking for ages. Naturally, like all our conversations we ever have, the topic moves on to our relationship and our past and whatnot. Feelings are going off like fireworks, and we're getting pretty close on the couch. Bam! Her phone rings. I'm thinking to myself, crap, I shouldn't be here. Problem is, I'm still pure, and I've got this beautiful girl who I know would have no problem in taking this further right now. Anyway, while she's on the phone, my mind is just playing chess with my Johnson. And it's not like a chilled out, relaxing game of chess. It's freaking wizard's chess. She hangs up the phone, we talk a bit more. Meanwhile, the chess game is still in full swing. Conversation is rapidly getting closer to the wild side of things when my brain declares, checkmate, on my Johnson. I snap the heck out of it and tell her I've got to go home because I've got to be up early for work. She pleaded with me to stay longer, and in my head I hear my Johnson yelling out, best out of 3. But somehow I managed to stay strong, kissed her goodnight, and drove home. Back home, I was calling myself a wuss for not doing it, but now I look back on it, I am unbelievably proud of myself. A, she had a boyfriend at the time. B, it's my mate's little sister, and he told me he was against it. I still talk to her occasionally, and we didn't speak about that night. I'm happy how it turned out. I'm glad I had the strength to not cheat with her on her boyfriend. I thought how crappy I would feel if I was him. I'm still mates with her brother. He's an awesome guy who I don't see enough. Kissed her goodnight? Huh? Story 15. Yep, I slept with a best friend's sister here. Was at the wedding of his older sister, which was kind of funny. I slept with his younger one. After all the drinking and dancing during the night, about 7 of us all went back to my room. I had the TV on and was just chilling out when she came into my bed and just started snuggling up to me. Fair enough. I started thinking about completely random stuff just to keep things under control. Last thing I needed was for things to get awkward. While I am thinking and chatting and saying random crap, she starts to move on me slowly. No way, I thought. She's obviously just getting comfy or something. Nope. Next thing I know, things took a pretty unexpected turn and got a bit intimate. Woohoo, party time, but after about 30 seconds, she obviously just got bored of it and just did it all the way. Sweet. Oh, and by the way, my mate was about 10 feet away from me at the time. Anyways, what about you guys? Got any wild stories to share? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. Two stories, very related. The first, I used to have this friend in high school. Had a lot of classes together. We messed around in school all the time. He'd always make jokes about sleeping with his sister. I never took it too far. Just a wink and a nod kind of thing. He took it in good humor. One particular thing was, one day you're going to come home and I'm going to be there in your sister's room, but not for you. That was just banter. Anyway, his sister had entered high school a year after us, so I interacted with her once in a while. She missed the bus home one day and asked me for a ride. So I gave her a ride, and she said her brother should be home in a bit, so I just decided to stay and hang out for a while. We were in her room, door open, completely innocent. When he got back, he walks in and just gives me this combination of glare and okay face. I'm like, no, it's not what you think. I just gave her a ride. Only I spit it all out in like 2 syllables. It was amusing. The second story is related to the first. The next year was apparently when she bloomed. She went from straight and narrow to quite curvy. Anyway, all the guys were tripping all over themselves to get at her. I get asked to give her a ride home again, and she seems really different personality-wise. She's a lot more quiet. Now, before I continue, let me preface by saying that in high school I was a very socially awkward kind of guy. I didn't really talk to or socialize very well with people outside of my group of friends. I wasn't hostile, I just didn't seek the attention out. Anyway, almost all the time we were together on the ride home, she was quiet. When we got home, I figured I'd again wait for her brother to get home so I could hang with him for a while. Eventually, I got her to laugh a little and open up. She lets me know that she's creeped out by all the attention she's getting at school. She said it went from being chill and relaxed to not having a moment's peace because guys keep flirting with her or eye-rolled at by girls. In fact, she said I'm the only guy aside from her gay guy friend that hasn't been relentlessly flirting with her. By this point, she was visibly more relaxed and enjoying herself rather than having to be in constant defense mode. We were in her room for about 15 minutes and she was on the computer. We were just making small talk and she said something to the effect of, I really trust you. A lot. I'm glad we're friends. She got up and came over. I didn't know what was going to happen, but she gave me a hug. I was all, aw, that's cute. But then she looked up and gave me a kiss. First, a peck on the lips, then a full-on romantic kiss. I wasn't expecting it at all. We did that a couple more times, but then she kind of got all quiet again and barely said a word to me ever again after that. I couldn't get more than 2 words out of her. I wasn't flirting. Nothing changed, but we practically never spoke again and she wouldn't even acknowledge me after that. So I guess it's only in the movies. Let me guess. You didn't kiss her back, and if you did, you just stayed silent afterwards. Story 17. My first time was with my best friend's older sister. Please note, our families had been tight-knit for 10 years at this point. It invited me over to try grass for the first time and have a few drinks, both of which she was providing. So we're sitting downstairs, drinking and smoking when my friend passes out. I can't exactly remember how it happened, but we decided to go watch a movie in her room. We turned the movie on, and pretty much before the opening credits had even ended, we started making out. Which, of course, with a teenager with questionable morals, soon led to both of us having fun times. We went back downstairs after we had finished, a little more sober, a lot more aware of what we had just done. She said if I told anyone, her mates would come after me, as it would tear our 2 families apart and ruin her in the eyes of her parents. A little shaken, a little guilty, a little pleased with myself, I went home later on and went to sleep. The next night I jumped on MSN. He was online, so we started chatting and had a 3-way convo with one of our mutual friends. He goes to get some food and we keep talking. All of a sudden, older sister jumps on his account, spiked on God knows what. She obviously doesn't see that there's a third person in the convo and starts talking about it. In depth. I'm trying to shut her up, but she's not paying much attention. She's so out of it that she doesn't stop talking about it until my friend comes back with food. Kicks her off and, saw the last line and then read the entire convo. I didn't say a word and just logged off. Our other friend just said, well, you messed up big time. And logged off too. So I'm sitting here thinking, crap. I got a call from her about an hour later, accusing me of telling him everything. I tell her what she had done and she says, oh crap, and hangs up. During the next few days, I had a few talks with him. He seemed pretty cool about it, till the 3rd day, where he just snapped and started justified mistreating me. I took it for a while, apologizing, blaming it on the grass and booze, which did play a factor, of course. I was pure. He cut off contact after that. Our families drifted apart, and when we did meet, it was awkward as hell. We eventually started talking about 2 years later, but it was never the same. We hung out a few times, and I even went to his sister's 22nd birthday, but it was pretty messed up. Don't sleep with your friend's sister if you still want to be friends. There's plenty of women out there. Story 18. Yes, I have slept with my friend's sister, and it got a little awkward around her brother for years as a result. At first, when I grew interested in her, I would come over to his house and hang out more. This was back in high school. But it became apparent after a while that I was to see her. When we finally started dating, he flipped his crap and refused to speak to me, or his sister, so definitely didn't start off on a good note with him there. Then, as time goes on, he eventually gets adjusted to it, and around a year or so into our relationship, I finally take her V-card. They both held it as a life-ending secret and mentioned it to no one, not even close friends, for fear that the word would get back to her brother. Well, jump forward another 2 years and he's getting rather annoyed by our relationship. Starts dating everything he can and boasts about his advancements, but never actually having intimacy. He was very much pure at this stage. We couldn't figure out why he would bother boasting until we guessed it was to bait one of us into saying anything. The cheeky little bugger he is and all. Finally, he meets a woman he gets engaged to after 10 months and boasts he finally lost his V-card, which continually got on my nerves. The dialogue went something like this about a week later. Friend. So, my night was good, if you know what I mean. Me. Good for you, bud. Glad you had fun. Friend. No, I mean, I had a really good time. In bed. Me. Oh, well, good for you, I guess. Friend. Yep. Finally lost my V-card. I'll help you on the rebound once you find a college chick to do it around with. Me. I wasn't aware I had to find a random woman to sleep with, nor that this was a contest. Either way, your sister beat your time by like 2 years. He absolutely flips his crap and doesn't speak to me for months. Needless to say, I've had a good time ever since fooling around with my friend's sister, but he certainly hasn't. Story 19. Never told anyone this. Was living with some friends. We were all around 20 to 21. One of my friends, a girl who I fool around with on occasion, turned 21, so we went to her folks' place for a party. Met up with a cute blonde. She was curvy and so beautiful. We didn't have intimacy, but spent about 10 minutes making out. For some reason, she was shaking, but she was the most beautiful girl. Found out after the party it was my friend's sister. She developed a huge crush on me and would always come to visit her sister just for an excuse to hang out with me. And I would just do my best to avoid her, terrified of being found out. My friend found out and didn't talk to me again. Then one time I went on a 2-week holiday, came back, and the entire house was empty except for my room and notes saying I had 2 weeks to move out. Story 20. Yep, I lost my V-card to my buddy's sister. Met them at the same time on a mission trip. Irony, and hung out with him on and off for a few months. Felt like I always got along better with the sister than I did with him. Anywho, went over to his house for the first time and his sister came home late. Ended up watching a movie with both of them and all of us got absolutely black out. Suddenly I found myself really close to her, having a great time while my friend was on the floor laughing and shouting, "Stop messing around with my sister!" Yeah, he was kind of a witch about the whole thing. A few minutes of terrible intimacy ensued and the next morning we didn't really mention it. Never talked to either one of them after that. Story 21. One of my best buds who grew up with me since the 2nd grade. I'm 20 now. Has a sister who is practically family to me as well, just not on the level of friendship as my boy. Ever since high school, I could tell she had a crush on me. No big deal, completely innocent, but I didn't see her in that same light. Fast forward, I'm beginning college, she's a senior, legal, and she's throwing signs relentlessly that she's into me. I mean, hardball. The 3 of us got intoxicated a couple of times together, and I guess you could say she used the situation as a crutch to try to spit game shamelessly. From following me into a restroom and catching me off guard and sneaking a French kiss when her brother is literally a couple steps away and not looking, she never let down, but continued to bombard me with these advances time and time again, only to be shut down by me each and every time. Just didn't feel the same. Then one fateful night, a mutual friend hosts a backyard party. The buddy and his sis are there as well. I ended up pretty hammered and she was pretty intoxicated too, but I didn't care. I was enjoying myself. So I walked to my buddy's bathroom, which is attached to his room, and take a whiz. I walk out and who do I see? That's right, she was on the bed waiting for me. Can't say I remember the details, or maybe I'm blocking them out, but next thing you know, we're making out and I got excited. So I said screw it and did it with her. The next part seems to last years. I heard someone opening the door, which neither of us locked because we were intoxicated idiots. I turned to see the most unfortunate schmuck walk in. I swear I turned my head, completed eye contact, and did it with his poor soul sister as the words, "Ah, crap," so calmly left my stupid head. I'm sorry, Jim. I still freaking regret it. Story 22. My sister's roommate in college. She was a senior, I was a freshman. Her roommate was a junior. I ended up being placed with 2 seniors my freshman year and they threw cool parties. We had an amazing time, thanks to sufficient liquid ambition. And let's just say she was loud. The next day, I'm at the gym with my sister. We were pretty close and worked out 4 to 5 times a week together. And she's going on and on about how her roommate came home that morning and proceeded to gush about the night she had. I didn't know until about halfway through the story it was me, because I had no idea who the girl was. Looked my sister straight in the eye and said, "That was me. Forget all those details, please." She was a bit embarrassed. Story 23. My parents passed away when I was a baby, so I was raised by my aunt and uncle. Didn't really have any friends. When I was 11, I started attending a new school and became friends with some guy. His sister was weirdly obsessed with me. Like totally obsessed with me. But I didn't pay that much attention to it. I started dating this chick who wasn't really over her previous relationship and thought I had a thing for one of my best friends, girl. I realized I liked my best friend's sister when my best friend and I caught her kissing her boyfriend at the moment. Oh, crucial to the story, I play sports. I couldn't make the game I was supposed to play, but my team won. When I came into the dorm with something like 40 people partying, I somehow ended up kissing my best friend's sister in the middle of the room. He was okay with it. We dated for a few months, after which I broke it off because of personal reasons. It wasn't really awkward when I saw her again, but she did give me a sort of final birthday kiss. After that, I didn't see her for about a year, but when I did see her, after some drama completely not related, we got back together. Now it's 19 years later and we have 3 kids. Named 2 of them after my parents, one of them after the ex-headmaster of our school, and some guy who used to fancy my mother and turned out to be the bravest man I ever knew. My best friend is cool with it. He married our other best friend, with whom we've been close since our first year. They finally got together after years of circling each other, when my best friend destroyed one of the final Horcruxes and made a comment about house elves. Story 24. I was at this party once, and my best friend's sister showed up out of nowhere. I actually didn't even know he had a sister. We got to talking and drinking, and there was an obvious attraction between the 2 of us. We were playing beer pong, and she was good. Like, really good. I was thoroughly impressed, which attracted me to her even more. Her smile, her laugh, her likes, her dislikes. Everything about this girl was absolutely amazing. My friend wanted to go to another house party because the one we were at was dying down. I asked her what she wanted to do, and she said she was getting pretty tired and was too intoxicated to drive, so I offered to give her a ride. The second we got into my car, it was on. We didn't even make it to the freeway before we were all over each other. We get to my house and I go through domes like Tyler Durden. The next morning I woke up alone in my bed. I got up, showered, and went to work. That was a particularly awesome dream. Dog, come on. Story 25. Yep, I went to visit my buddy for his 21st birthday. I'd only been 21 for a few months. He was living about 400 miles away at the time with his mom, his older brother, and his older sister, and her 3 kids. Quick backstory on her. She was 25 at the time, just got the finalized divorce for her ex-husband. They had been separated a year already. He had mistreated her their entire relationship, but she was now officially free of that schmuck. They have a weekend of intoxicated degeneracy and end up bar hopping, and the last night I was there. Our group got separated, and I ended up alone with his sister for several of the bars. He got more hammered as the night went on, talked and danced with each other, and I ended up carrying her to the last bar. Her feet were hurting because of her heels. Somehow everyone had made it to the last bar. They were all over each other, and we were talking real close. Then she says, "Are you going to just shut up and kiss me?" So there we are, making out in this seedy dive bar until my friend and his brother pull me away, and my friend's girlfriend pulls their sister away. They asked me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I intoxicatedly told them yes. They said, "Okay, when we get back, the rubbers are in the downstairs bathroom. We really don't want her having any more kids. It's better that it's you than anyone else. Have fun." Later, according to my friend's sister, that was basically the same thing my friend's girlfriend said to her. "Are you sure? Okay, be safe and have fun." I don't know how we made it back to their house, as that part was a blur, but that night was amazing. The next morning, we were all hungover as crap, but we remembered what happened, and we all had a good laugh at breakfast. My friend and his brother were cool with everything. They were happy it was me and not some random schmuck. Story 26. I slept with my friend's older sister. Everyone in the group of friends always gave him crap about how hot his sister was, asking him to set us up with her. Still don't know how I managed it, but one day she sent me a message and just asked, "So, when are you taking me to dinner?" I was in shock. Ran out of the room, got my friend, not the brother, but another one of the friends who knew her, showed him the message and was like, "Holy crap, what do I do?" His jaw is on the floor. He turns to me and says, "What do you do? You put on your suit and take her to the nicest freaking place you can afford." Fast forward to now, we're married and have 2 kids. Story 27. My best buddy since I was like 7 has a younger sister. She's always had a crush on me, but I never did anything for respect for my bro, and I always thought she was too young. But one day she turned into a beautiful swan with the nicest back I've ever seen. Well, she had a party one day for her birthday, and I was kind of messed up and we fooled around. I told my buddy the next day, and he just laughed at me and said, "Tough break, kid." Then he punched me really hard and we made an epic mealtime breakfast. Story 28. Many years ago, I almost slept with a sister of a very close friend of mine. She was married, but separated at the time, and the only thing that kept us from happening is that she decided to give her husband one last chance. My friend found out that we were fooling around, and he blew up at me, telling me to stay away from his sister and that I was a bad person. He quit talking to me completely. I never got the chance to speak to him again. 2 months later, he ended it all. The whole thing is something I regret on a daily basis. Story 29. Probably too late for this to be seen, but I hope someone takes notice and can help me navigate this quandary. My best friend has the most charming, beautiful, witty, down-to-earth sister in the world, and I'm hardcore crushing on her. I've liked her for around 4 years, but I've known her for around 8-ish years. I haven't felt like this around a female in God knows how long. Whenever I'm around his family and his sister is present, I feel like I can't even look at her because that one glance would be enough for everyone to tell that I'm completely head over heels for this girl. Sometimes I even avoid talking to her at length when her parents are around just so it seems like I'm not even interested in knowing this girl. Now I know she feels the same way about me, maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but I haven't made a move because I don't know how my friend would feel. On top of that, his family has been extremely kind to me and I love them like a second set of parents. It isn't a question of how I would treat her, because with her, the only thing I could do is treat her the way a woman deserves to be treated. The question is about the family. I don't want to lose my best friend over this or the relationship I have with his family. I guess I'm just looking for an outside perspective to kind of gauge the situation and take note of my options. Thanks for taking the time to read what probably seems like a teen angst-filled post. I'm sure their family would love you. Story 30. Never slept with a friend's sister, but I have slept with a sister's friend. Here's the story if you're interested. I kind of knew that her friend had a crush on me, but I just brushed it aside. One day she came over to watch a movie with my sister, and I had not seen the movie either. New Pirates of the Caribbean, so I decided to watch it too. About halfway through the movie, my sister gets up and goes to her room and goes to sleep. Wasn't feeling good or something. We were just talking, and I stole her phone because she got really worked up about it, and I needed a laugh. She said something along the lines of, "What do I have to do to get my phone back? Give you a whistle?" And I just laughed it off and gave her the phone. A few more conversation topics pass by, and she brings it up again. At the time, I was in a long slump, so I jokingly said, "If you want to." And she got off the couch and went upstairs into my room. I followed, we did the deed, her mom came to pick her up, and then she started dating some dude the next day. Nothing bad ever happened. Waiters or waitresses? What's the worst day you've ever waited on? Alright, so I had this small table in my section made for 2 people. I had the hostess sit a young lady at the table by herself. She was early 20s, blonde, a pretty black dress, cute heels, etc. I walk over to greet her in the process of saying, "Hey, my name, water." "Okay, I'll go get, I have my guy meeting me here too." "Okay, ma'am, no problem." So I bring her water to her and she tells me she doesn't want to have to wait for him and orders a lobster by herself. Her food comes out about 15 minutes later. Still no guy there. When she's about halfway done with her lobster, the guy comes in. She says she's upset he didn't show up early for the date. I can only assume he was on time and she was 20 minutes early. I went to talk to him and he was the sweetest guy. Like, gives boots to homeless people kind of sweet. Very handsome as well, so he orders some food while she's arms deep in her plate, working down her lobster. I kept overhearing little bits of their conversation while waiting on nearby tables. All I can hear is him trying to be sweet and her just cutting him off, showering him with small bits of crustacean. I felt so bad for the guy. His food comes out and she's already done with her food. So she sits there playing on her phone while he tries to talk to her. She keeps responding with small little, "Fine, 'kay, not really," kind of answers. He asked me for a box and asked her if she wanted the dessert. She says she wants a slice of cake for herself tonight, so I go in the back and get it for her to go. He quietly pays and walks out with his head down while she's on her phone. He just seemed like the sweetest guy. I don't know why she could act like that to someone so sweet. But yeah, that's only one of many, many stories. You deserve better, King. Story 2. The guy made a reservation saying he was going to propose. He asked for a special table and for dessert to come with a sparkler candle and "Will you marry me?" written on it. I bring out the cake. The manager follows me with 2 glasses of champagne and my coworkers are cheering. We set everything down and walk away. They end up having a serious, quiet discussion. It is very obvious that she's rejecting the proposal. Then 3 of their friends show up and sit at the table, all excited, thinking their friends just got engaged. But it quickly became apparent to them that it was not the case. It's very quiet and awkward at the table. The woman who was being proposed to left, and the reject and his friends got wasted. They gave me a 20% tip too, which was nice, considering how crappy his night had been. Story 3. A few months ago, I had a woman who was attractive in her mid-30s, I guess, come in, sit down, and order a glass of wine. She was waiting for her husband for a date. I brought her wine. She waited 45 minutes and then put in an appetizer order. 15 minutes later, ordered food, saying he'd be there soon. Almost an hour and a half later, as soon as I brought out dinner, she asked me to box it up and bring the check without touching her food. Husband bailed on a date with his wife. I felt awful. She was nice and patient and had a few glasses of wine while waiting for him. She held it together pretty well, so much so that I can only assume it's happened before. I smell a divorce coming on. Story 4. I had a regular sitting at my bar in a chain restaurant about 2 weeks ago. He sits there for an hour, leaves for 20 minutes or so, and comes back complaining that he'd been stood up. The date was supposed to have arrived an hour before he mentioned anything. Poor guy. All of a sudden, this woman appears, apparently his date. Nothing out of the ordinary except for the fact that she was an hour late, so I continued making drinks for the restaurant. A couple of minutes later, and a waitress comes up asking if the woman was on a date with a guy at the bar. I responded yes, and asked how she knew. She told me that the woman had just left her. The waitresses section had been on a date with another man. Story 5. A friend of a friend got dumped by her boyfriend, and I was the only one she knew in town. So I spent the evening with her in a bar drinking with strangers. Just because it was fun, we pretended to be a couple and made a story up about how us celebrating our 3-year anniversary. It was a very small bar, and we basically had a big conversation involving everyone in the bar. After maybe 2 hours, we leave, and my friend gets a train to her hometown. Meanwhile, a Tinder match contacts me and wants to meet me. I agree, and she suggests that same bar. So maybe 1 hour after I left the bar with my girlfriend, it came back with another girl. We had a great time, make out, and leave together. Everybody got my back. Nobody said anything. Story 6. When I was in high school, I used to work at a local seafood restaurant, taking orders, earning my crappy pay. At this point, I had only worked there for a little over a month. This was my first job, so I never had experienced any terrible customers, but oh boy, was I in for a surprise that evening. A couple is seated at their table. I bring them water and ask what they want to drink, the usual. Immediately, I saw the guy was a major schmuck and the girl seemed like the average shy girl. They both ordered a steamed lobster, so when I brought it to them, I grabbed her lobster and pretended the lobster was clamping to him. The look of sheer embarrassment in the girl's face was overwhelming. She paid for a meal and left him there. Well deserved. Story 7. Worked at a breakfast diner. A couple came in. I remember almost exactly what they ordered. She had oatmeal in a fresh fruit cup, and he had banana French toast, 3 eggs, sausage, bacon, hash browns, and toast. She got a mimosa too, and he just had coffee. Every time I went to check on them, he ordered something else. More bacon, more hash browns, etc. The average bill for 2 people at this restaurant was between $15 and $20. This dude racked up a $40 bill. The time came to drop it off, and I went back and he said he forgot his wallet. So she put her card down. I went to the card machine and it declined. I returned to the table and told her it had been declined. She called her bank and I assumed they said tough crap, so then she said she would call her mom for money to be deposited. The call got heated, so she stepped outside. I could see her pacing and crying out front. She came back in tears and said something to the dude, then she left. I went over and said that he could run home and get his wallet. He looked at me and sighed irritably as if I'd inconvenienced him. Then he reached in his back pocket, threw down some cash, and left. It was a really small town, so this was the topic of discussion for a while with our regular customers. What a schmuck. Story 8. I once ended up waiting on my ex-girlfriend, who I was not over, and her boyfriend. After some extremely awkward small talk, I went to grab her drinks and noticed her boyfriend was not there when I came back. Then one of my coworkers told me he was outside the restaurant crying because apparently they fought a lot and he was a crier. It was both satisfying and sad to see. Eventually, they made up, but the whole experience was just a bucket of uncomfortable. Story 9. I wasn't a server, but I worked at the fanciest restaurant in an upper-middle-class suburb. The kind of place where house moms go to get intoxicated on Thursday nights. Anyway, one night one of the servers I was working for, I was a busser, pointed out this table to me and just said, "Listen in on this table. It's going to be a long night with him." The table had what looked like it was a pair of cousins out to dinner with both sets of parents, so I was originally confused where they were going to be in such trouble. I went over to bring them bread and I could immediately tell what he had been talking about. No one was talking, but they weren't even looking at their phones. Everyone was just tensely staring at each other. It was so palpably awkward, I left instantly. I went about my menial duties for about another 15 minutes when a conversation at the table finally came up. From the bits and pieces it put together, the 2 kids we thought were cousins were actually dating and their parents were meeting each other for the first time. So basically, nightmare situation for both kids. At some point in the night, the daughter decides she's comfortable with jokingly calling her boyfriend an idiot, and to this day, I refuse to believe that the girl has ever made a bigger mistake. Immediately after the words left her mouth, the boyfriend's mother loses her crap completely and starts driving into the girl. screaming at her, calling her names, and pretty much every single awful thing you can possibly say to a teenage girl. I was pouring water at the next table over at the time, and I managed to spill it all over the table because of how loud her outburst was. The girl and her parents left pretty quickly, seeing as the girl was crying her eyes out and looked absolutely terrified. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as they left, the boy and the father turned on the mother and released a near-identical stream of vitriol on her. It was so bad I wouldn't be surprised if they got a divorce. All things considered, I think that may be the worst date I can imagine for a 14-year-old. Oh my gosh, those kids need to be debriefed. Story 10. Couple comes in on Valentine's Day. No reservation. They get seated at the bar, order some drinks and apps, and are sitting there chatting and laughing. Seeming pretty normal. After finishing their apps, the guy drops to one knee and pulls out a ring. Girl immediately shuts him down. He didn't so much as get a word out before she's saying, "Nope, nope, nope." Grabs her coat off the back of her chair and is putting it on, still saying nope over and over. Practically runs out the place. Does not look back. He looks crushed. Pays the bill, walks out, staring at the floor the whole time. Man. Story 11. It's been years since I've waited tables, but I remember this one couple. The guy was very possessive over the girl. Every time I tried to ask her anything, he would interrupt and speak for her. I don't know if it was for my benefit or hers, but she obviously wasn't impressed. She kept giving me this kind of embarrassed or apologetic look. Well, I felt really bad for her, so just after a few minutes after I delivered their entrees, I returned with a glass of wine and told her it had been sent by a gentleman from the bar. I'll never forget the dude's expression. Kind of furious, but ultimately defeated. I never really spoke again, and of course, I didn't get a tip. He kept craning his neck around, though, surveying the dudes positioned around the bar. I wasn't really worried about that because this dude was a shrimp compared to the guys around the bar. Thinking back now, I don't really think it was as clever as it did then. Sure, the guy was a total schmuck, but I didn't know him, and it could have easily sparked something that would have set him off later. Scary to think about, but the girl seemed delighted with a glass of wine. She thanked me, and she drank it. Maybe it sparked something in her, like the realization that there were better people out there. Who knows? Story 12. This reminds me of when my grandfather passed away. After the funeral, my family went out to a restaurant and got intoxicated and partied afterwards as is tradition. We throw parties after people pass away because the person wants us to be happy, even though they're no longer around, is the short version of it. We walked in, and the waitress sees a group of 30-ish people all wearing formal clothing and having a good time. So she walks over with a tray of drinks and the biggest smile I've ever seen, and she asks who the lucky couple is. Well, my mother told her why we were actually there. I've never forgotten the look of shock and awkwardness as she backed away to get us more drinks. Story 13. All right, so I had a two-top table with a very handsome young guy and a super attractive young woman. Early 20s, I think. Anyways, I proceed to go over and greet them and discuss the specials for the night. They seemed nice, and it looked like it was their first or second date. I ask for the drink order, and the guy gets an iced tea while the woman orders a glass of wine. She then proceeds to tell the guy in the highest-pitched voice to order alcohol because she will feel so naughty if she's the only one drinking, and she doesn't want to be a naughty girl. This goes on for a few minutes until the guy gives up and awkwardly just orders a vodka soda. That was the first weird exchange. Next, I bring them bread, and they devour that thing fast. I ask if they would like some more, and the woman says, oh yes, she would love some, but she doesn't want to be a naughty girl again. She described herself as naughty again for another few minutes until I just left. They place their orders, and she goes to order a steak with fries as her side. She again repeats how she's so naughty for getting carbs as her side. Guy just looked so drained by the end of the night because this woman would not stop saying the word naughty. I could tell he was just pushing through because she was wicked hot and apparently a naughty girl. But gosh darn, there's a point where the whole high-pitched fake, I'm a naughty girl crap gets so annoying. Story 14. There's this couple that comes in about once every week or two in my restaurant, and the guy's a complete tool. He won't let his girlfriend order what she wants and cuts her off, saying, she'll eat what I decide she'll eat. It's really annoying because he'll just cut me off mid-sentence and tell his girlfriend to stop talking. Last time I served them, I was standing in front of their table with their food and they wouldn't stop making out, so I had to ask them to come up for air so I could give them their freaking food. PDA is gross. Story 15. Kind of a middle-aged married couple that came for lunch on the patio. Guy starts talking on his phone the second he sits down. It sounded like he was talking business for work and a Saturday afternoon, and he didn't hang up the entire time it took for the food to come out. At least 30 minutes. The wife was just sitting there quietly, waiting for him to come sit. When I brought their entrees out, I was so relieved to see him with her phone hung up. But not 30 seconds later, he's back at it, and he kept finishing and starting new calls all through lunch, dessert, and paying the check. I don't think I heard the wife say a single word the entire meal. Worst part was that the patio was overlooking a scenic lake, and he would not sit down, just kept wandering around close to the railing and talking. I know the manager got a few complaints from other patrons. Felt terrible for the wife, looked like she was used to it, and he made a comment about how much he liked spoiling her while paying the check. Still talking on the phone as they walked out of the restaurant. On top of all that, he would snap his fingers at me if he needed something. Oh, so a grade A schmuck. Story 16. My friend Susan was being chased by this guy since high school. In her late 20s, he showed up and they were playing around together, as she put it. Susan straight up told him they were just friends and never were anything more. Several months later, she was in a single auction and he bought her for a pretty good sum. This was also a dinner and they went with another couple. While Susan was backstage, he told her girlfriend he had bought an engagement ring and was going to propose that night. The girlfriend flat out told him that he was being dumb as heck and that Susan wouldn't marry him. Well, he did anyway later that evening and she just jumped down at him. Asked him hadn't it occurred to him they had never slept together, much less kissed or discussed marriage. Damn guy became a stalker and she had to get a restraining order on him. He finally backed off. A few years later, I'm reading the paper and the guy had been arrested. He was a lawyer, had gotten married, had a kid, and was getting a divorce, and had told a criminal client that he would do his case for free if he would end his ex. Story 17. I'm going to hit this from the opposite perspective. Me and my wife run a day in a loud pizza parlor. We're both kind of annoyed with the place we'd chosen, not knowing it would host a bad musician after 8. The waitress essentially picked up on us being on a bad first date and he treated us as such. Me and my very happily married wife, who basically just wanted to get our food as quickly as possible at that point, asked for a box the second the food was delivered. As he laid down the box, he said, "Sometimes people just aren't as interesting as you think, huh?" That was the only time I've ever left nothing for a tip. Don't make assumptions. Sometimes your avenue is not what people thought it would be. Story 18. Many years ago, I was a 16-year-old hostess at Bennigan's. 2 couples came in for what looks like to be a double date. It's a quiet night and they're seated near me, so I people watch a bit while taking care of other things. The guys sat across from each other on the inside, the ladies on the outer edge in the bar booths. The bar booths at our location were elevated around 8 inches, so there was a step up into the booth, making it quite high. The men loudly drank and smoked and talked, while the ladies talked fairly quietly, one seeming to work hard to pry the other into talking a bit. After the appetizers and just before the entree, a quiet lady comes out of her shell a bit. She says something and nudges her date. And everyone is smiling for a brief moment before her date turns red in the face, stands up, backhands her out of the booth, and starts dragging her out of the restaurant by her hair while screaming at her. She's crying and begging for him to let go, apologizing the whole way. A lot of us were frozen in place, and everyone's moving. Servers were running out in the restaurant, and I'm on the phone to the police. He busts his date into his SUV, and the other couple gets in the same car quickly. Dude hauls, nearly running over a server as he backs out. He gave the vehicle description and plates to the police. It was obviously a dine and dash on top of him harming his wife or girlfriend. I never heard if anything came of it. This was nearly 15 years ago, and I still think about her. I wonder if she's okay and never got away from him. I hope she did. And I hope he's behind bars. Story 19. This wasn't a date, but easily the most awkward meal I've witnessed. So I'm at this breakfast joint. It's the dinner rush, so we're not totally gone, but not packed either. There's this family of about 6 people seated right in the middle of the dining hall, the most conspicuous possible place to cause an awkward scene. They're 4 older people, at least 50, and 2 teenagers who look about 15 or 16. This kid is just bawling while he explains to his grandparents and other family members that his girlfriend is pregnant. Like, he's barely even speaking. It's mostly just flubbering. His girlfriend is completely silent with her eyes on her pancakes. The grandfather, I assume, is just talking right over the kid while he cries. "Oh, Billy, what did I tell you? This is what happens when you let sin take a hold of you." The dude is making the kid feel so much worse. It felt so bad. The only time the grandfather stops screaming at him is when one of the other older people chimes in to get a punch in. "I knew it. I told you they were doing something." "What would your parents have said about this?" It was merciless. At one point, the waitress had to squeeze by the crying kid to get to the booth next to them. Tables are very cramped, and she's trying to take their order, so the lady with her 2 toddlers is just yelling over the bizarre and very loud disaster in the middle of the room. I need 2 kids' meals," with a funny face. "Well, you'll have to get married, of course. Have you talked to her folks yet?" Poor lady couldn't even order. Story 20. Former waiter here. There was this one date that comes to mind. At first, it seemed like it was going okay, but then I noticed the girl was starting to look uncomfortable. I decided to pay more attention to the conversation, and the guy was talking about how he likes to use moisturizing lotions and hair volumizing spray, and if she ever stays over at his place, he's got her covered for hair products. Then he started talking about how he thinks Justin Bieber gets a lot of undeserved hate and how talented Bieber is. This guy tried to hold her hands across the table, and she withdrew hers immediately. I could tell she just wanted to leave ASAP, and this dude could too. Then he brought up how rich his dad is and how his dad buys him anything he wants. Then he starts bragging about how he always gets what he wants and she's just cringing the whole time. I wasn't able to catch what happened next, but later I saw her storming out of the restaurant with this dude just skulking about at his table. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 21. A blind date between a man and a woman while I worked at a pizza place. The lady ordered a small pizza and a drink, and the guy ordered a plate of fries and a root beer. It was weird to order just fries because this wasn't a place where you did that. What was weirder was when he finished, he ordered another plate, and then another, and then another. This was not a place with free fry refills. I also refilled his root beer about 20 times. Every time I came back with a new root beer or another plate of fries, the woman looked more and more uncomfortable. When all was said and done, he ate 5 plates of fries and enough root beer to float a boat. Story 22. My first year as a waitress, I'm maybe 19. I worked at a chain restaurant in a small farming town. Hostess asked me to pick up a table way out of the open section, which is annoying, but no huge deal. When I get to the table, it's apparent that they wanted to sit in private because she's got a big black eye. Not a fresh one, but the kind of weathered, faded purple that sits under the skin like it's always kind of being busted up again and never really heals. She got this big blonde perm with side bangs she tries to cover it with. The entire time I try to ask her questions directly. Do you want a drink? And I'm out with, she'll have a water. He was kind of sinewy, gnarled-looking guy, red-faced, wearing a volunteer firefighter t-shirt, drank a Bud Light, ordered the most expensive thing on the menu while she eats a salad. He definitely wasn't a new kind of guy. He was what you'd expect. I was actually at this time carrying a card for a woman's shelter in my wallet, and I kept wondering if I should give it to her, but he never left her alone. And I was afraid if he saw it, it might start a fight between them. Finally, when they asked for some boxes, I went to the back and wrote his name. Got from the credit card on one so they'd know which box belonged to who and hid the card and some napkins in her box. By the time I finally worked up the courage to run out there, they had left, and that was that. Story 23. Obligatory, not a waitress, but story. So a place near my house seems to play host to a lot of first date from OKC and Tinder. It's really quite entertaining on Friday and Saturday nights to go there and just observe. I've seen several dates. Some where the couple was obviously getting along, and some where they obviously weren't. The one that sticks out the most in my mind was this couple, probably about my age, mid-late 20s. The girl is very cute, little blonde thing, big curls, sweet smile, and the dude is classic finance bro. Polo shirt, boat shoes, the whole thing. They're at the table right next to us, and this dude proceeds to talk about himself the whole time. He never stopped. She ordered a craft beer, and he starts going on about how he doesn't like women who are too high maintenance. He ordered something like Miller, which is silly at a craft beer place. Not the one who's too comfortable with the guys. He's going on and on about his dad's money and his sweet job at whatever. Doesn't stop or ask her anything about herself. And story of this day went so poorly that he was still talking and she was so tired of trying to say things and having him just steamroll her that she took out her phone and started checking Facebook. He was undaunted. She left when he went to the bar upstairs because he wanted a rum and cola. Story 24. 2 women came in on a date on a Sunday night in the suburban bar I worked at. They were absolutely lovely to me, but a table with 2 lemon-faced older people were scowling at them, doing normal date stuff like sharing food and holding hands on the table while talking. The old couple had a miserable time because they tried complaining to me, and I said I couldn't do anything. Their mouths dipped deeper, and they huffily asked for the manager. The manager came over. I feel I should mention he did drag on the weekends, but passed for straight. Sat there and listened to them, pretty loudly, talk about that sort and family values, and eventually he nodded. Said he would understand if they never came back, but he couldn't comp their meal based on other guests. Leaned in and whispered that he worked on much better plays during the weekend, and he'd comp them if they came by. They agreed that would be acceptable and left. We then dropped 2 free tickets off the lesbian couples table, dropped the straight demeanor, and invited them to come and enjoy the show. Then we comped the ladies' dinner and threw in a free dessert. The lesbian couple showed up, and I heard they had a lovely time. The manager said he didn't see the old people show up, but the bouncer said a very confused and then angry older couple showed up looking for a comped meal. Story 25. I worked at a hotel or restaurant near my 6th form. I was a waitress mainly, but since it was a small place, I helped out with cleaning the rooms after guests had left as well. One Sunday morning, a guy and a girl in my year came downstairs on their own and looked horrified when they saw me at the bar. I really didn't care that much. I served them breakfast and cleaned the room up. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty obvious they had rented it just so they could have intimacy. I don't keep up with gossip much, so it was only a bit later that I remembered. The guy had a serious girlfriend who was definitely not the girl he had walked downstairs with. Awkward. I never said anything to anyone. Not really my business, but seriously. They could have picked a hotel that wasn't within sight-line of her college if they wanted to keep it a secret. Story 26. The girl sits down at my table in the bar and is waiting for her first Tinder date. They have a couple drinks and she leaves. I think everything is normal. Until the dude then hands me his card and says, "You're prettier. Call me." and proceeds to head into a meeting in the dining room. To make matters worse, she calls the restaurant 10 minutes later to ask me if he really had a meeting to go to. Super awkward. Story 27. Old couple used to come in every Tuesday and order the same drink week after week. Fish and chips and a half pint of bitter for Sir. Scampi and white dinner for Madam. Both easily in their 80s. I'm sure you can see where this is going. One week, an old fella comes in alone and brings a crossword. And the next week, and the next. Heartbreaking to see, but he was still just as polite and tipped just as well as usual. You'd never know anything had changed. I hope they had a wonderful life together. Story 28. First time I was ever a waitress was at this fancy restaurant. You know, folded napkins, 2 glasses on the table, 2 forks, all that smush. Valentine's Day, this couple somehow decided that the 14th would be a great time for a first date. Appetizers roll around, they're chatting about what they do for a living, which was their clear giveaway that they were just getting to know each other. I deliver their main course, and these 2 people are pretty much on their phones until dessert. Man gets up to go to the bathroom, takes his jacket. Woman paid for the meal, which I overheard them discussing beforehand anyway, because she didn't want to take advantage of him and was a bit of a non-traditional gal, from what I caught eavesdropping from my other tables. They leave in separate cars. Guy comes back. I thought he had left. He was gone for a really long time and sits down at the table on his phone. Eventually realizes that the lady's coat isn't there and leaves too. Cringed when he asked for the bill and had to tell him it was already paid for and that the lady wasn't in the bathroom. I don't really know what happened that day. Maybe they both thought they got ditched. Story 29. Oh man. So I actually knew the girl this happened to, and she was my table. She arrived with a guy I knew who was a bad rep of being intoxicated and crappy. Right in front of his date, who is super hot, he tells the host that she doesn't know him, but he follows her on Instagram. When I'm taking the order, he tells me that he pre-gamed the date at a buddy's house. Orders a bottle of Pinot and tells my friend it's only for himself, laughing. My restaurant has exquisite food. He insults half of it. He tells my friend that he's a sous chef at a restaurant 200 miles north in a big city and is only in town to visit his parents. This is all untrue. I know that he's a busboy at a local restaurant. On a second glass of wine, he becomes belligerent, yelling, "Don't be a witch," when she says she may not go to a bar with him after dinner. I tried to order another bottle of wine, but I cut him off. She ended up paying the whole tab and walking out. Story 30. I was serving a couple who were clearly fighting. They weren't speaking to each other and weren't sitting near each other. It was clear the girl was upset with the guy, and you could tell by looking at the guy that he felt bad. I didn't ask them what it was about, obviously. But when I served them their entrees, I told the girl that I would give them a free dessert if she sat next to him and accepted his apology. I held up my end, and they left happy. Story 31. They were in my table, but I eavesdropped as I served the table next to them. I'm pretty sure they met on the internet as it was their first time meeting. The lady was Asian and clearly not fluent in speaking English. The guy was white and reminded me of a 50-year-old version of Vanilla Ice. The worst part was, when he mocked her English, openly called her ugly and demanded that she pay for his beers. The most heartbreaking thing was that she said she would pay for his beers if he would stop calling her ugly. Well, that guy deserves bad things to happen to him. Story 32. I worked at a coffee place. Not like a Starbucks, but a small place. It was winter and there was an ice skating rink on the square outside. At about 3 p.m., a couple came in, all red from the cold. They ordered 2 hot chocolates and sat down at one of the tables and make their drinks and take it to them. It was pretty clear it was their first or second date. They were talking about their ambitions and stuff they like to do, etc. At one point, she walks to the bathroom and he catches my eye and gestures something about how hot she is. Since I'm making coffee for other customers, I just smile and give a nod so small that it could mean anything. She comes back and they continue to chat. After a while, they order more drinks and a sandwich each. When I'm bringing them over, he looks at me and then at her suggestively. He whispers something to her. She replies, "What? Is that a joke?" He shakes his head. He grabs one of the sandwiches I just brought and throws it at him, then storms off. He looks at me unashamedly. Everyone is looking at him now and asks me if I will whistle him for 50 euros. I think he'd been trying to talk his date into a triad. I said no. He screamed, tried to leave without paying, but tripped over some ice skates and knocked himself out on the metal fence around the ice rink. The girl came back a few hours later to apologize. I told her what had happened. She couldn't stop laughing. I ended up going on a date with her myself a week later, but we weren't a good match, and we kept it at one date. Story 33. I have 2. One was at this candlelit, white tablecloth restaurant. These 2 older teenagers come in on what looks to be a first date. His mom walks them in and takes pictures of them at the table. Really awkward. Then the mom leaves, and they proceed to have a really smiling or nervous meal together. Fast forward 45 minutes or so, and dude, man didn't have enough money to pay. So we wait on mom, who comes and picks up the tab. The poor girl never lost her nervous smile, but was pretty sure she was mortified. Occurrence number 2. A middle-aged couple comes in, smiling, but very quiet. Same restaurant, by the way.
I don't really think anything, but a few minutes later, before the food comes out, I walk by and through tears, she abruptly puts her napkin on the table and says, I can't do this, and gets up and walks out. The guy tries to stop her, but lets her go. He stayed. I can only assume she must have driven and left without him, or she either got a cab. Story 34. While I've seen a few awkward dates where someone's not engaged or whatever, there are two that stick out in my mind. The first one was where a couple was having a one-sided argument where the girl's just being snippy and angry, and the guy was sitting there pretty much taking it, and only talking in a hushed voice so as to not draw too much attention. This seems to go on throughout most of their meal, and towards the end of them finishing their entrees, I ask them if there's anything else I can bring them. Yeah, a new boyfriend. She replies while giving me a complete head-to-toe eye. I didn't even have a real response for that. Just kind of went with, sorry, and awkwardly went to get the bill. She was cute, but 40 minutes of hearing her just lay into that dude just made me feel sorry for him. The best one, though, wasn't my table. It just happened next to my section. Basically, there was a man that took his girlfriend out to dinner, which wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but about 15 minutes into their date, the guy's wife sits at a nearby table to have dinner with her mom. 5 minutes later, the woman sees her husband at the table with another woman, and you can imagine how that went down. Story 35. So I created an account just to tell this story. It's not really a date, but one time I had an older woman come in and sit in a booth facing the door. She told me that she was waiting for a date. Okay, so go get her a drink. She's reading a book, and every time the door opens, she would look up expectantly. Some time passes, and eventually she orders dinner. She finishes eating, and no one ever shows up, and I feel a little bad, but I've been in the industry for a while, and it's not the first time one of my tables got stood up. I give her the check, and she goes on her way. Fast forward about 3 weeks. I'm working, and I turn the corner to head to the kitchen, and guess who is sitting in the exact same booth, reading the exact same book? Yep, it's her. I stop by and ask if she remembers me, and she says, "Oh yes, I remember you." I ask her how her evening is, and my heart drops. She says to me, "I'm waiting for my date." So I tell the server who's waiting on her, being my cynical self, that I think she's working us to get a discount. It's not unusual for us to buy a drink or give a discount to an entree if someone gets stood up, so I tell the other server to make sure not to discount anything. But she doesn't fuss over the check when it's delivered and just sits there, looking up at the door every time it opens hopefully. Anyway, I saw her about 3 more times, and I waited on her one other time, always sitting in a booth facing the door, always telling the server that she's waiting for her date. Still don't know what her deal was. I guess she was just lonely. Story 36. I'd say it would have to be the one where I'd put my date in hospital. I was working as a waitress in a restaurant that saw a lot of upscale business lunches. Back in the 3 Martini era, the CEO of one multinational used to come through every few months and spend a couple of days taking people to lunch at the restaurant. He was friendly, and he'd often ask me out on a date, quite charmingly, which made up for the fact that he was some 40 years older than me. After about 2 years, I said yes to a date. Figured it would be a fun dinner, and then I'd disappear, dubious virtue intact. We had a lavish dinner in the rooftop ballroom of the Hotel Vancouver. We enjoyed cocktails, champagne, lobsters, a couple bottles of red wine, and then several rounds of double Armagnacs. There was a big band orchestra playing, and despite the fact that I didn't know a thing about ballroom dancing, he got me out on the dance floor several times. I was having a great time, and so was he. During the last dance, I decided to try and do the swoop with him in my arms. Did I mention that he was 6'4", over a foot taller than me? I dipped him down, and then I dropped him, and then I fell on top of him. We spent the rest of the evening sobering up from the emerge at VGH. I kept coming back to the restaurant, but he never did ask me out again. Story 37. I wasn't the server, but I was managing the shift when this happened. Worked in a romantic restaurant. We used to have a lot of anniversaries, birthdays, and yes, proposals. We even offered rose packages. I had a reservation requesting our most special private corner booth for 2, with a dozen roses for a marriage proposal. When the group arrived, the man sheepishly asked to be moved to a larger table because his girlfriend's mother had decided to tag along. The server said he was very uncomfortable the entire time. Well, he decided to go on with it anyway. He pulls out the ring, asks her, and the mother says, "No, she will not be marrying you." The girlfriend never said a word, just looked down at her plate the entire time. Then they uncomfortably continued their meal in silence. He paid for the bill, and the mom took the daughter home. I worked there for about 2 years. Must have had an average of at least 1 proposal a week. This is the only one I recall that was rejected, and the circumstances made it beyond memorable. Story 38. My time to shine. So during summer months, all these dudes come to town to do construction. Well, they come to where I work because it's the only decent place to eat in my town. This guy starts hitting on her busser. She's young, so we're a little weirded out, but whatever. He gets her number and pretty much stalks her. But there's a catch. He has a girlfriend from back home. The busser ignores him, so eventually he just leaves her alone. Out of nowhere, this guy brings in said girlfriend. Everyone at work is just kind of like, what the heck? But here's the kicker. A regular from the bar is hammered and tells the girl that the guy hits on girls while he's away. So she gets all upset and tries to leave. But she can't because she's in a town she has no idea around. So he makes her sit through a freaking meal with him. I could literally feel the anger radiate off this poor girl until they left. He never came back, but I did get $10. Story 39. I wasn't a waitress, but my little sister, her husband, and their baby went to Wingers in a college town. She said all the workers happened to be female, but this family comes in and all of a sudden the dad, stepdad, or boyfriend starts yelling at his wife or girlfriend. He's calling her a witch and just yelling at her, and then starts yelling at the 7-year-old about respect and how he needs it and the mom needs it and shouldn't be taking crap from her kid, and the mom and 7-year-old are just crying. The old guy stood up and told him to shut up and he shouldn't talk like that to a woman and child, and if he didn't stop, he'd call the cops. The guy shut up real fast and sat down, but as soon as the old guy left, he started again. Or someone would have called the police, but everyone was scared of him. Story 40. I was a bartender a decade or so ago. One of the barbacks came in on his day off with a girl he wanted to impress. She was smoking hot, but also very young looking. She ordered a martini and asked for her ID, which she did not have. I had to tell her I couldn't serve her. The barback was furious with me because I was basically shutting down his date and making him look like a schmuck. I was angry for the whole date and kept coming to me asking to pour a drink for her, etc. And I kept refusing. She was going along like she was having a good time, but also kept goading him into asking for drinks for her. Eventually they left and he gave me the finger as they did. The next day he was working and I was off and she came in, again without ID, and he gave her a drink. Instantly cops came in and cited him for serving a minor. She was on a sting operation the whole time. People, is it weird for a 30-year-old to date a 21-year-old? If so, why? Here's one data point, my story. A male, when I was 34, the younger sister of a good friend of mine, fell for me. She was 21. I wanted nothing to do with her. To me, the age gap was a bridge too far, not to mention she was my friend's sister. Nothing good could come of this. In retrospect, I often said my father would have talked me out of it, but my father was already gone. Nobody in my circle discouraged me from dating her. My friend, her brother, gave it his blessing. His wife was also on board, going so far as to set up a date for us. We dated and got married when she was 24 and I was 37. Holy crap, was she freaking immature. She never wanted me as a husband. She wanted a younger, smarter, cooler, more athletic, handsome father who was also an excellent baseball player and better cook than her dumb old man. She shied away from every decision, every single tough situation, and bailed at the first sign of any strife. Marriage lasted 9 months. My advice is this. Morally and ethically, you're in the clear, but if you're trying to find a woman to make a future with, find a woman, not a girl. Story 2. I don't think age gap is a big deal if it's a legal and mature relationship. Like people who get bent out of shape if a 60-year-old dates a 30-year-old. They're both legal and consenting adults trying to live their own lives. There's nothing wrong with it and it doesn't need your input. When they were 30, they weren't even born yet. Argument means absolutely nothing to me if they met and consented at a legal age or the younger of the two was allowed to make that decision for themselves. Yep, the timing is what matters most. Story 3. I wouldn't personally do it. When I was 30, I dated someone who was 23 and it was awful. The maturity or life experience gap was very evident. 21 would just be the same. Two people at vastly different points in life who likely want to experience different things. And at least for the 30-year-old, maybe not experience some things again. I'd probably want a different pace of life. Not saying it couldn't work, but I think the outcome would be vastly different if it was 31 and 40. Story 4. There will always be two opposite answers to your question because people are different. They have different life experiences, different values, and different lifestyles. And for the same reason, my answer to your question is no, it's not weird. Some people at the age of 21 may be much more mature than others in their 40s, so it's absolutely not about numbers. If you feel good together, why would you care if it is weird to some random people? Personal example. I met my future husband when I was 19 and he was 30. I don't think I've ever felt that age gap. Yes, it wasn't easy at the beginning, especially considering the fact that we lived in different cities and it was a combination of age difference and distance, but we worked it out. I don't believe in relationships that do not require effort from both sides. Regardless of whether you have an 11-year difference or no age difference at all, it's all about whether you want to be with this person or not. We celebrated a 10th wedding anniversary in June, by the way. Story 5. From personal experience, I did not think it was weird at the time. I was 22 dating a 31-year-old. But now, as a 31-year-old myself, I see it as a problem.
The life experience from 22 to 31 is vastly different. I also feel like, as a 22-year-old, it was easier for me to be manipulated by someone who was older and had more dating experience. I would question why the 30-year-old can't date someone closer to their own age. There are probably reasons. Story 6. Do what works for you. But at that age, there's generally a huge difference in maturity. When I was 32, I was newly single, and while I originally had my Bumble set to 21 plus, but that quickly changed. If at that age you aren't recognizing people roughly 10 years younger than you as basically adult children, then open your eyes. It's a very different age demo. This is a generalization. For those of you that were in similar situations and had a great situation come out of it, great. What I'm saying is that this does feel a bit predatory, or at the very least, that the older person is in a state of arrested development and maybe needs to grow up. Story 7. I've done a similar age gap, 19 when I was 28 or 29. It didn't work because our lifestyle was way too different and we had different priorities and a big maturity gap. She was partying and going wild every day, financially very irresponsible, a cheat, very vain, and wanted to quit school to do corn. Her being really hot was the only thing that she had going for her. I was working and going to school for my doctorate full time, so my weekdays felt like suffering, and I wanted one of my weekend days off just to rest and run errands or catch up on stuff. She constantly wanted me to take her out. Lasting 3 months was a miracle. Even if she'd been an 11 out of 10, I wouldn't have been able to endure another day. She got a huge allowance and was spoon-fed everything by parents, so the maturity wasn't there. But she likes older guys because they were more emotionally mature to her. Story 8. As a 22-year-old, I'm usually pretty creeped out when someone older than 26 flirts with me. There are a few times it wasn't like that, but in hindsight, I chalk it up as leftover trauma from old men online when I was a kid. At 21, the brain isn't fully developed. Are there some 21-year-olds who are more mature than some 30-year-olds? Yeah, but they still do not have the same amount of experience a 30-year-old has. In the US, a 21-year-old can hardly buy alcohol. They're likely in their second or third year of college. They're less likely to have a stable career. If they have kids, the child is likely only a toddler, or they probably don't have a kid. The median age when women become mothers is apparently about 26 years old. It isn't really my business who a person dates, but it's weird. I would absolutely side-eye it. It's better than dating an 18-year-old, but it's still weird. It's even more weird if the 30-year-old is specifically looking for someone younger. If it ends up happening by accident, I can almost understand it, but once it becomes a pattern, it is a red flag in my opinion. Story 9. I'm around 30 now, and when I think about what I was like as a 21-year-old kid, I genuinely cringe. You change so much during early adulthood because your prefrontal cortex is still developing till around mid to late 20s, and you generally have a completely different outlook in life. Things you want for your future, yourself, different political views maybe. You just grow up a lot in your 20s, in my opinion. I think the age gap itself is completely fine as long as both are consenting adults, but the difference in maturity is just way too big. Also, in my experience, oftentimes older people, often men, tend to date in significantly younger age groups because they can find a suitable partner in their own age demographic because they are immature themselves. People their own age aren't as naive anymore as a 21-year-old maybe is and don't want to put up with their crap. That doesn't necessarily have to be true for everyone, but so far in my experience, it has. Story 10. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. I'm inclined to say it's usually weird, but it's not necessarily weird all the time. But as an almost 30-year-old, I'd feel weird. I work at a university and we got a lot of undergrad workers or volunteers, so I'm constantly around college juniors or seniors that are 20 to 22. It's not like we don't get along or that I don't think they're attractive, but they just feel a little too immature. And we are definitely not concerned about the same things in life. I'm getting married soon and probably want to have kids within the next 5 years. I'd feel super weird doing that with a 21-year-old and expecting them to make grown-up decisions like being a mother. I know for certain that I was not a mature adult at that age. Also, I talk about old stuff from my childhood and they'll have no idea what I'm talking about and it makes me feel old. 8 or 9 years is a bigger generation gap than I thought. I guess, hypothetically, if I met a 21-year-old who wasn't a student and had a decent job and stuff and was independent from their parents, I might feel less weird about a relationship, but I probably still would. I have a little sister-in-law that I met when she was 13 and she's 21 now. I feel like I'm always going to view people her age as kids. Story 11. As a 32-year-old male, for me, that's a yes. It's weird. Mostly because of how immature people tend to be at 21. Adding to that would be these things. Even if they're mature for their age, there's a massive gap in life experience and a high chance of the 21-year-old growing apart from their partner based on wanting to experience other things that other 21-year-olds are doing. They're both adults, though, so they can do what they want. But there are a lot of common sense reasons you shouldn't do it. Story 12. Not all 4 years in a human's life are the same, and the years 21 to 25 are where a lot of growing and maturity takes place. Now, I want to preface this response or rant by saying I'm not specifically condoning or encouraging big age gaps in relationships. I'm just using examples to try and demonstrate my points. I do, however, think that two happy adults, 18 plus, should be allowed to be happy. If there are no signs of mistreatment, then shut up and stay out of it. Now, with that said, X time period is where a lot of growing and maturity takes place. That's basically what they say about 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and 15 to 20 and 25 to 30. It's always a lot of growing up and maturity takes place between X and Y years, so it's bad. A 17-year-old dating a 20-year-old is some kind of huge taboo, but if it's 18 and 21, it's fine. But if it's 18 and 24, it's some kind of taboo, but if it's 19 and 25, it's fine. The whole system is completely arbitrary. The guy who wrote the quote is absolutely right. Not every set of 4 years in a human's life is the same, and not even the same between two individuals. Someone can be 15 and overall be more mature than a 40-year-old who never grew up. There are 50-year-olds who barely know how to tie their own shoes and can't cook for themselves and have to be taken care of by the people around them. And 17-year-olds who work hard and manage finances while being a single parent still going to school, while also making sure the child has a good upbringing and good home-cooked meals. And you shouldn't even have to guess which one of these two most people would think of as more responsible, more mature, or grown. Frankly, we all grow up completely different. Even two people who are exactly the same age can have completely different growth and maturity levels. So I honestly don't get this obsession over age gaps myself. It's just arbitrary, conform to my whims, or I'll shame you nonsense. The only age-related question that really matters is, are they young? And a follow-up, age-loosely related question of, how much, if any, risk is there of cruel behaviors like power leverage, etc.? If someone is young and dating their 30-year-old teacher, that's a huge problem. The partner is considerably older, which is of dubious value in determining anything because, as established, two people can have completely different maturity levels independent of their age. But more importantly, they are in a position of power over the younger party, and there's a strong possibility of some level of power leverage, etc. involved. This is the problem that matters, in my opinion. It shouldn't matter if there's a 10-year or 20-year or 30-year age gap between two individuals who are 18 plus, old enough to think and decide for themselves and who may very well be in completely the same or similar maturity or growth levels. It's frankly always baffled me that we treat fresh teens like adults and start dumping responsibilities on them like they're adults. But then they're not actually adults with full rights over themselves until 18. But wait, that's still not enough. Once they're 18, they're not actually adults until 21. Oh wait, they need a few years of college or a job to be an adult, so they're not actually adults until 25. Oh wait, they're not actually adults till they've settled down in their life at 30. There's always more growing and maturity that needs to happen. That's the most absurd case of goalpost shifting I've ever seen that no one seems to acknowledge. Story 13. It's weird when significantly older guys date women in the 18 to 24 year age range. The older the guy is, the more it comes across as if he can't attract a woman of quality in his own age group. So he has to date women who really don't know any better in the grand scheme of life. Until you get into a really old guy with a 20-plus year younger wife, then it's clear that it's a trophy wife situation. Is a 9-year age gap weird? Not when it's a 28-year-old and a 37-year-old or a 31-year-old and a 40-year-old. It's her age being so young that makes this more of an eye raiser. People are all different. Some people are more mature and some are more juvenile. Is she just as worldly, accomplished, and mature as you at 30? Or is it more that you are matching her level of maturity and lifestyle at 21? Or somewhere in between? I don't know where you are in the world. Most people in their low 20s here are more immature and less independent than my age group was at 14 to 16. I'm 41. Here, 21-year-olds are still dependent on parents, live at home, and don't own cars. They even have a driver's license at all. They don't know how to cook and don't have full-time jobs. Basically what teens used to be, except they just live on their phones. In the end, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you're both happy, then have at it. Story 14. Yes, it is. You're at different stages in life. 21-year-olds are trying to figure themselves out and are fresh on the adulting scene and still figuring out who they are without family hanging over them. 30-year-olds are more established, should have a decent understanding on how to be an adult and who they are as a person. I'm saying this as someone who was the 20-year-old going on 21 with a 30-year-old. It was the worst relationship of my life. I had no clue what I was doing or who I was, and I felt so much pressure from this older man to conform to his likings and be a good girlfriend and be a 1920s bunny that I kept pushing my happiness aside until I was to the point of literally wanting to end it all. Please don't do it. Just focus on your happiness and run. Story 15. It's really only weird to young people. I don't think it's weird, but I also wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it because of how immature that person would be. If they were mature, or at least on my level, it might feel different, but that would be rare. It's only 9 years. When 9 years is half your life, yeah, it seems like a lot. If you two get married and have a family, it won't seem weird or a big gap when you're 59 and she's 50. If that 21-year-old is mature enough and you're clicking, give them a chance. You never know. Forget what judgmental people have to say or think. You know why? Because screw them. That's why. Story 16. Not going to lie, when I was 27 or 28, nothing seemed cooler to me than dating some hot 21-year-old. But that was at a point in my life when I just finished college and still wasn't really making professional money, and I was trying to cling to a frat boy lifestyle that had long since passed me by. I had an epiphany when I was 29 and went to go visit a younger sibling at our college campus and was called sir like a dozen times. Every single person outside of that relationship thinks it's very weird, so it probably is. However, this is 100% the creation of women online. I used to do liquor distribution, and a lot of my business was selling alcohol to bars in the gayborhood. And I promise you, you're much more likely to see a significant age gap in a relationship between two gay men than you are between a man and a woman. But you never hear anyone tell a 35-year-old gay man that he's abusing power dynamics for dating a much younger man. So I totally get the point of people who think that it's weird, but it's also really weird to focus on it too much. Consenting adults are allowed to consent. Story 17. Speaking as a young person with a 12-year age gap, I think it's situational. I was forced to grow up and be responsible and mature far too early and don't care about having fun. I'm here for the hard stuff, and so is he, and we get along well. We bring out the best in each other as well as the worst, but he's my best friend. It definitely isn't something that can work for everybody, and it was weird at first for both of us, especially him, but it's doable with the right people. Story 18. I'm 31 and my boyfriend is 22. They've been dating for 2 years and knew each other for a whole year as friends before that. My entire life, I dated older guys because I like mature men. My boyfriend is the most mature young man I've ever met. They have a lot of the same hobbies, play the same games, listen to the same music, and have the same long-term life goals, etc. When I met him, I was out of an 8-year cruel relationship, and I didn't really get to be young and have friends, so when I met my now boyfriend, I was in a very 20-year-old mindset. I think not being able to have friends before made me a little socially stunted. Some people had problems with me dating someone 9 years younger than me and assumed I was taking advantage of him. In reality, even though I'm older, I find myself being the one taken care of emotionally by my boyfriend in a way I've never experienced. And anyone who actually knows us, like our friends and family, all agree that we're very compatible and perfect for each other. I think it really just depends on an individual level whether it's an okay relationship or not. For me, it's been the most loving relationship I've ever had. Story 19. I mean, each case is different, but generally, I'm going to say yeah. There's just something not right about the scenario. An individual's life at 21 is vastly different than at 30. At 21, you're likely a student, you're a novice in the workforce, you're just learning who you are, what you like, and finding your footing. At 30, you usually have an idea of who you are, have a more established career, maybe a homeowner, etc. Intellectually, they are just too much of a difference, and I don't know how a 30-year-old would be mentally stimulated by a 21-year-old. Story 20. I think the question you should be asking is, why does the 30-year-old need to date a 21-year-old? Can they not find someone their own age? My oldest is 20 and dating a 26-year-old that literally has no life skills or common sense. The SO is dating someone younger because they're on the same level, maturity-wise. I don't like the age gap, but I know if I say anything about it, it will trigger the "I'm an adult and will do what I want" response. So I will keep my options in that relationship to myself until directly asked by either of them. Story 21. The question itself points out a very common problem. There's a difference between chronological age and maturity level. Even a 20-year age gap may not be strange if the relationship makes sense, much less a 9-year age gap. Are their maturity levels the same? Do they share the same interests, beliefs, and values? Is one clearly taking advantage of the other, or are they genuinely compatible? Asking if it's weird for 30 to date 21 to me means you're more concerned if people will think this is acceptable than it is, are they actually compatible? People will say that the age gap automatically means you're in two different places in life, and while this is often the case, many people are not. If you're in love, age becomes a number. If you're trying to be socially accepted and ensure everyone thinks you are doing the right thing, then yes, that is important. All that being said, many 20-year-olds are way more immature than 30-year-olds, but not every single 20-year-old shares the same maturity level as their peers. Again, age is just a number. There are more factors to consider. If you're enjoying the video, Don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 22. It depends on the specific 21-year-old. For me, most of the time I wouldn't consider it. That said, when I was in my early 30s, I did date someone who was 21. He was perhaps the most intelligent person I'd ever met. I wasn't even physically attracted to him at first. In fact, I remember thinking he was unfortunate looking. Then we talked for hours, and suddenly I found him irresistible in every way. I tried to remain mindful of the potential differences that could arise due to the age gap, and we checked in with each other about it regularly. I did feel very self-conscious when we were in public together, which is something I regret in hindsight. I looked very young, and while I was often told I looked young for my age at the time, the age gap was nonetheless obvious to anyone who looked at us. I think a big part of my self-consciousness was due to the fact that we were a gay couple, and a lot of people still view all gay men as perpetrators. I definitely got dirty looks from the people who think all gay men are weird. We often engaged in mild PDA precisely to anger those types of people. Eventually, we stopped dating, but it was amicable, and we have remained friends. He is still one of the most amazing people I've had the privilege to know. Unfortunate looking is crazy. Story 23. When I was 21, I dated a 32-year-old professor. He was more immature than me. Had a gambling problem and lied all the time. He was trying to get me to move away with him to New York to be near his family, and I declined. Good thing I did too, because I found out a lot of horrible things after I left his bum. I'm just glad I was a mature 21-year-old, because he ended up taking one of his sad tricks with him, and they both ended up on hard substances. Story 24. To each their own, I say. Questions like these always invoke many opinions, but at the end of the day, it depends on the couple. Some people get really hung up on age gaps and their own rules about it, while others don't care as long as it's legal and consensual. I've seen age gaps of over a decade work better than those closer to their age range. If someone is hung up on the age gap more than the couple's ability to make it work, it is a them problem, no one else's. Story 25. It really depends on the individuals. Brings back a treasured memory. When we were 20, my friend started dating this guy. They were perfect together, and neither asked, "Hey, so how old are you?" Their relationship got pretty intense really fast. I happened to be with him when something came up in conversation that led to the realization he was 9 years older. The absolute shock on both their faces was hilarious to me. Both are absolutely horrified. They just had their 25th anniversary, so, they got over it. Story 26. I would say if two people find that their lifestyle and goals are compatible and they're both legal adults, then it genuinely doesn't matter. In an ideal world, everyone in one age group would be at the same maturity level or at the same place in their lives. But that's not always how it works. Personally, I'm attracted to someone who knows what they want out of life. At my age, 28, a lot of people are kind of starting to figure it out, but someone 10 years my senior is more appealing to me because they've been established for some time. It depends on what the individuals are looking for, in my opinion. Story 27. I'm 29 now, and I don't know what different part of life everyone keeps referencing being at. Sure, I have a degree now, but as someone who doesn't want kids or a house, my life goals of traveling and having fun are the same, if not stronger than when I was 21 because I actually have the money to do it now. I haven't dated in years, but chances are women my age might be starting to want kids, so I either have to sift through for the ones who also want to stay kidless, or I date a 20-something-year-old who also just wants to travel and have fun in life. But then again, the 20-something-year-old will want to have kids in the future. I think. Story 28. My boyfriend of 2 years and I have an amazingly rare relationship. I'll be 24 in a couple weeks, and he turned 34 this year. We met when I was 20 and he was 30 and got together after a year and a half. He has a 9-year-old daughter who I met when she was 7, and he's divorced. I have no kids and don't biologically want any. Was in college and I was never married. Although we were at different points in life, we were deeply in love. The kind where even after 2 years, it still feels like we're in the honeymoon phase. We've never argued or had any big disagreements. Our morals, politics, views on religion, future plans, and intimacy needs align. He was worried about the age gap at first, but noticed that I wasn't as immature as other girls my age. My parents are 12 years apart, so age gaps never mattered to me. Like any other relationship, if you find the right person with the same values and outlook on life like yours, then go for it. Not all age gap relationships are toxic. Just make sure you're compatible and happy. Story 29. No, because both are consenting adults in legal age, it is nonsense to say people with an age gap cannot date for some illogical or conventional moral reasons. If a 21 has the mental capacity to drink, vote, and fight in the armed forces, then they are of sound enough mind to decide who they want to date. There's no philosophical argument that says dating older or younger people is unethical. And for everyone who says it is wrong, I challenge you to tell me why there shouldn't be some law that says only people of the same age can date one another. If a person who is 30 cannot date a 21-year-old, then the same can be said for the ages 22 to 29. In that case, only 21-year-olds can date each other and so forth. Obviously, that is absurd, which is the same as this strange sense of morality where people say no to this question. Story 30. I'll never understand the obsession with this topic. These are consenting adults. Let them make their own decisions. I'm not here for infantilizing 20-somethings as though they're utterly incapable of making any kind of responsible long-term decisions for themselves. People are complicated. I don't know these individuals. I can't possibly accurately guess their relationship dynamic or motivations. As long as everyone is legal and enthusiastically participating, I don't care to comment. Story 31. That depends on a variety of factors. Maturity level back then with boomers was very different than they are today. Many were literally full-grown adults by the time they were out of high school with whole families, and often they were with people they knew for many years before they dated. There were age gaps nobody batted an eye at, unlike today where kids are still very much like children, afraid to be adults. So I would tread lightly with a 21-year-old if I was still dating. They're not the 21-year-olds back then. Story 32. The rest of the internet might call you the creepiest person in the entire universe for this, since age gaps are suddenly a hot-button topic. But the way I see it, I would likely not personally do it, but if two other consenting adults do it, I have absolutely no problem with it. I think for me personally, it would be hard to connect with someone that much younger than me, but I never understood why people have issues with consenting adults and age gaps if there was no power leveraging involved. Story 33. As a 33-year-old, a 21-year-old feels like it is only a small step up from a child. I'm sure a 50-year-old looks the same way as a 30-year-old. You'd have to be incredibly immature and unaware or in denial about your own age or selfish enough to take advantage of someone that hasn't spent enough time on the planet to learn from the mistakes yet. To date someone that much younger than you. 18 to 23 are some of the best years of your life while your fluid intelligence is at its peak. For you oldies, don't impact someone else's best years because your chance is gone now. Let it go. Stick to other crystallized intelligence people that are in the same boat as you. Story 34. Yes, it's weird. I'm generalizing here, but these are two completely different stages in life. Most people at 21 still don't know what they want and are doing a lot of trial and error in the dating scene. They are less likely to be financially stable, maybe still in college, and can recover from all-nighters like it's nothing. At 30, most people are planning roots or settling down, and they're likely to be more established in their career, which makes a big difference. Story 35. I pulled this quote from a quick Google search. In short, heterosexual men will find 20-year-old women most attractive regardless of how old they are. Women, on the other hand, tend to find men of a similar age to them most attractive, so as they get older, women will generally start to be into older men. I haven't really noticed anyone mentioning certain biological and sociological factors. There's hard research done on these topics, like how women are biologically more likely to become pregnant between their late teens into their late 20s. Younger men, sociologically speaking, aren't really that wealthy during their 20s on average and therefore can't really support a family as well as a 30-something. So in my opinion, based on easily found research, is that no, it shouldn't be abnormal for a 30-something to date a 20-something. I, personally, as a 30-something heterosexual male, can say that I am attracted to 20-something females. Not sure if I would ever date one, but that's because I've been with my current partner for over 7 years and don't plan on it ever ending. But hypothetically speaking, I found that age of girls attractive, so it's pretty obvious how my biology would answer that question if given the option. Story 36. I would say a bit weird, but if you're both happy, go for it. The thing is, as you become older, in my opinion, age doesn't matter so much. There's a 12-year difference between my sister and her husband. He's older, but also I was crazy and fell for her. Granted, I didn't want to have feelings for him. An 18-year-old guy and I, female, I'm 29. We worked together, so talked often. Yeah. Maturity difference. But in some ways, he was better in regards to being chill. I overthink, and that ruined it. I know 18 is an adult, but a lot of people will also say, that's still a teenager. Which I know is true and a heck of a lot weirder than 21. So you do you and screw what other people think as long as you're not forceful. Story 37. No, 9 years isn't even that big of an age difference. I've met immature or doesn't act their age 30-year-olds, and I met the inverse for 21 years. Even if they aren't how the average 21-year or 30-year-olds behave, who's to say two mature people or immature people of those ages can't date or become a relationship? We all have benchmark behavior we accept from a typical 21-year-old, but for typical 30-year-olds, it's all in the by 30 you should category. Different phases of life are different for some people, sure, but that isn't much better than saying love at first sight isn't real. If 1% of long-term couples are love at first sight, it's real. People also age too. At 27 or 28 with 36 or 37, no one ever cares anymore. It's just you're dating an older person. Story 38. Yeah, and if you're 30, you know why. If you're 21, I'm already in my mid-20s and I've gained so much wisdom in the short period of adulthood. Looking back at 21, I was more submissive because my ex made my decisions for me. I didn't know how to be independent as I do now. I didn't recognize red flags like I do now. And even at 25, I still wouldn't go after a 21-year-old. They barely became an adult. Sure, they're not high schoolers, but they have so much life they need to live. 30-year-olds already experienced their 20s and are usually ready to settle down and find a life partner, which shouldn't be a 21-year-old. Story 39. In my opinion, no. And I think from personal experience in the LGBT space, the extremely small dating pool often means there can be pretty big age gaps in those relationships because you have to be willing to sacrifice certain dimensions in order to not pass away alone. If you only like tall, athletic, blonde men who play video games and are the same age as you, your dating pool is probably 1 to 2 people unless you live in a massive city. So you have to expand that. Any hair color, any height, any build, any age, etc. The list of requirements grows shorter as your willingness to compromise increases out of necessity. But I also think that due to being less likely to have children, less likely to get married, and more likely to have trauma or mental illness that has delayed development, age gaps in the gay community don't seem to be quite as impactful as for straight people. I have no research to back this up, but just from personal experience, my conversations with gay people 10 years my junior versus 10 years my senior run pretty much identically because most gay people have a similar set of interests in the universal culture. Story 40. As a young-looking 30-year-old who just got out of a 2-year relationship with a 23-year-old, nobody ever said it was weird. I just had a difficult time talking to friends about our problems because most would just say, maybe she's just too young to get it. Before getting into the relationship, we used to be friends with benefits. She was pushing for a relationship, but I was concerned about the age gap, so after a few months, I finally gave in. Mostly because she seemed to be very well-adjusted and not into partying or drinking. She also told me that she wasn't into that sort of stuff, so I thought we were all good since I'm trying to settle down. What it didn't account for, well, people tend to have friends in the same age group as them, and honestly, it was all drama you could think of at that age. Luckily, she got rid of the most toxic ones, but still, you just can't get rid of all your friends, so it was mostly drama after drama. In hindsight, though, there for sure was a huge gap in life experience. She just wasn't as mature as I thought in the beginning. She put on a pretty good face for the first year of the relationship, but afterward, it just came out more and more. The biggest factor in hindsight was her struggle to communicate with me about issues, concerns, or problems. She didn't really grasp the concept of, hey, whatever it is, we talk to each other, and then we together figure out a solution or resolution. Us versus the issue. It mostly ended up in you versus me and no resolution or solution, which mostly means that we ended up having some fights that could have just been discussions. I also would like to say that I was her first real adult relationship, or let me rephrase it. It was her first relationship with an adult. And I think at that age, you have to take that into consideration, that that is a real possibility. So you're pretty much trying to date a toddler in terms of experience in that frontier. But in the end, it always depends on yourself and the other person. As long as you're on the same wavelength, you can make it work. Story 41. It is going to completely depend on the level of maturity of the 21-year-old. It could be really freaking weird, or it could be completely fine. For me, as a 31-year-old, would most likely not date someone that young just because where you are going to be in life at these two ages are most likely going to be wildly different, and interest may not really align. However, if I meet the one and that person happens to be in their early 20s, then I wouldn't let the age gap alone be the deciding factor. Story 42. Yes, I would question why the 30-year-old can't find someone their own age. Well, it's not that, it's just that they're attracted to people younger than them. Okay, now I'm wondering, what is it about younger people they find so attractive? Their good looks, their naivety, their total lack of grown-up problems and expectations? Something, biology, something, in their prime. Now I'm wondering why they feel the need to justify themselves under the shaky idea of biology and evolution. At best, it tells me the 30-year-old is very immature, and at worst, they are a creep. And yes, before anyone gets their back up, I apply this to women as well. Story 43. A 21-year-old is just starting out, barely out of school, maybe even still studying, hasn't even started their career yet, still in the middle of their post-teen or early adult development. A 30-year-old, on the other hand, is already busy advancing in their career, in a completely different stage of development, most likely already settled. These two people are in very different stages, mentally, physically, and financially. Building a healthy relationship in this is a challenge. I would not advise dating. Many people would frown upon it. If both of you are okay with it, then that is fine. I wouldn't. I'm 22 right now, and the lowest I will consider dating is 19, for above reasons. Story 44. I used to have a 22-year-old girlfriend when I was 32. There were more differences in regards to maturity than I'd initially anticipated.
If I was again in that situation, I don't think I would go for it. 32 and 42, on the other hand, I would immediately do. I think after the late 20s, there's not much of a maturity and compatibility anymore. Obviously, it always depends on the actual person, but that's what I had noticed with my former girlfriend and her friends. Story 45. First off, I'm 40. I had my confidence, self-esteem, self-outlook completely and totally obliterated by my ex-wife of 16 years. I don't mean to sound conceited, but I know when I was younger, I was very handsome. I've been doing online dating. For some reason, I keep getting 20-something-year-old girls that are interested or want to go on a date. I went on a date with a couple of them, but the generational gap was just too much. It does make you feel good, though, as a man who's been through hell and completely eviscerated, to realize you can still date a young, hot 20-year-old if you choose to do so. I do not want to date someone probably with another child because I have an 8-year-old boy, someone who gets a sense of humor and can actually have an intellectual conversation. Story 46. What's weird is that we as a society have determined that 18 is acceptable, yet people still try to push their morality on you for no reason. As long as you weren't power leveraging this person or lying in wait, just date them. You'll both have your fun, and then eventually you'll probably decide, God dang, never doing that again. A 21-year-old is fully capable of choosing who they can date and make life decisions. Any denying this is infantilizing them and just blatantly wrong. Story 47. It really depends on the individuals. Maturity levels, emotional maturity of the people involved, what stage of life you're at, what you're doing with your life, work, study, or all that stuff matters more. I feel like you can find extremely mature 21-year-olds or very immature ones, just as you can find very mature 30-year-olds or borderline childish ones. I could never pass judgment unless I met the people in question. Personally, for me though, I'm closer to 30 than 21, and in my mind, that's a millennial and Gen Z person dating. I really have so little in common with the younger Gen Z individuals due to our different outlooks on life and the way we grew up and the environments that shaped us. I could make an exception, but it would be rare. Story 48. Depends on what you want from the relationship. People will jump and say, what in common you have with her? Or, ew, she's 2/3 of your age. But to be honest, 21-plus age women are more beautiful than ever and more girly. Older women will demand more things from you because of their biological clock. Sometimes this behavior can be too much for guys that don't want that kind of compromise. Be happy in your own way. Just be careful not to hurt anyone. Story 49. I always say 18 to 22 is called baby adults. It's a perfect age for weirdos to go after younger people. I was the 19-year-old that dated a 26-year-old, and it was creepy. I was so smitten to see it at the time, but I look back now with nothing but regrets. He wasn't a bad guy, but he definitely was weird. 21-year-olds don't really know the world as much as they want to believe they do. They'll swallow their "I'm mature for my age" words really quickly by the time they turn 25. It really comes down to what do you guys have in common. Probably not a lot. There's a big difference in maturity from college age to people who have already done the college thing and have been working for years. It really comes down to maturity. I know it feels like I'm babysitting when I go out with my Gen Z friends. Everyone I know changes a lot between those baby adult years. While someone who's 30 might be set more in their ways, not changing as much, you want to date someone that will grow with you, not someone who will change before your eyes.
Has anyone actually ever slept with one of their friend's moms? If so, how did your friend find out about it? Yeah, I have. Here's the story. My buddies, let's call him Jake, parents, were divorced and she was a young mother, about 17 when she had him. The mom, let's call her Jane, and I always got along really well, and it was honestly like hanging out with a slightly older friend sometimes. We would make fun of my buddy about his girlfriends, draw on him when he was too intoxicated, etc. I would also talk to her about my issues in a way that I couldn't to my own parents. More about substances, alcohol, and girls. So I would say we were friends. Jake also had a little sister who was the biggest sweetheart I know, but that doesn't really matter. Jake had a cabin in the mountains, and he and I would go up skiing a whole bunch, so we decided to go up on a weekend. And Jane and his sister came up a day later. It was a good old-fashioned fun weekend of skiing, and Jake had to get back for work on Monday, but Jane and his sister were going to stay, and I decided that since I don't have to work, I would stay up and head back with them a day later. Well, the sister took off to a friend's house for a party, and I was watching a movie on the couch, and Jane sat down with me. We were chatting and joking, just having a good time, and I wondered out loud if Jake had left any beer. She said she had something better and brought back a nice bottle of wine, or what I thought was a nice bottle of wine because I know crap all about wine, and we went through that pretty quickly. Now I'm a lightweight, so I was pretty buzzed at this point, and I think she was too, but she went and got another bottle anyway. We started to drink that one, and we kind of flirted. Now on to the good part. We were talking about my most recent ex when I said, yeah, she was a crappy kisser and just about crap at everything else. And she answered, am I any better? And things got pretty real pretty quick. We were on the couch before we took it up to the bedroom, and I'll leave it up to your imaginations on what happened next. Next day, I woke up and she was out of bed, and when she came back into the room, we talked and agreed it had to stay between us and no one could ever find out. Hence why I'm posting it on Reddit. And drove back the next day, and we've never spoken about it again. Story 2. Yes, but I'm not the one that slept with his mom. He slept with mine. It's pretty crappy, actually. It's the sort of things that ruin friendships and trust with parents. It put me in a horrible situation of deciding whether or not I should tell my father. Still married. I was having a chill night at home with my girlfriend, my friend, and my mom. We just finished having supper and we started drinking. At one point, my mother, my friend, and I were getting fairly tipsy. We started arguing about politics, and since my mom and friend have similar views, they kind of ganged up on me. We were all getting a bit frustrated about that, and my girlfriend could tell, so she told me to just go to bed and forget about it, which left my mother and friend alone upstairs. Now, this may seem like a bad idea, but my mother has always been very cool with my friends, but she isn't attractive by any means, so the fact that he would attempt something never occurred to me. Fast forward a few hours later in the middle of the night, my girlfriend wakes me up and tells me we have to get the hell out. I'm still in my intoxicated haze sleep, and I just agree. As I'm starting to calm, I realize some crap is weird. My friend comes downstairs and passes out on the couch. I go upstairs, and my mother locks herself in the bathroom. I'm just really confused, but I don't think much of it. My girlfriend and I decided to go get some McDonald's. When we finally get on the highway, my girlfriend looks at me and starts to cry and tells me that for at least 10 minutes before I woke up, she heard noises upstairs, similar to noises two people would make. I start to get furious, but it still seems unimaginable that they would do that. So, after I promised my girlfriend that I will not attack the guy, we decided to go back home. At this point, I have no idea if it's true or not. For all I know, my girlfriend was probably dreaming. I get home and tell the guy to call himself a cab. Mother is still locked in the bathroom. The cab comes and the guy goes home. I end up going to sleep at my girlfriend's house. Fast forward 1 month. I haven't talked to the guy since. The mother denied everything, said that the friend tried to initiate something and there was kissing involved, blah blah, but no intimacy. At that point, I say screw it. Nothing I can do. Then, out of nowhere, a certain person that works in a regional hospital sends me a message, asking me if I knew about my friend that was in the hospital a few weeks ago. I get pretty confused, and that's when I realize that the guy tried to end it all after that happened. I'm pretty freaking shocked to hear all this. I decided to contact the guy and finally get the record straight in the situation. He tells me that he did, in fact, sleep with my mother, that he regrets more than anything else, and that he's ever so sorry. Tell the guy that I don't hate him for doing that. After all, alcohol was involved and, intimacy. I just told him that I was disappointed he did that to my family. I asked him not to contact me for a while because I don't want to talk to him, and that's it. I also confronted my mother about the ordeal. She still denies it to this day. Who wouldn't, right? She's still with my father, who doesn't know what happened. I told my mother I would not be the one to tell him and that it was her responsibility to do it. Since that day, I've had a few nights of drinking beers with my dad, and this is freaking tearing me apart. Friend is 21, mother 54. Story 3. This isn't exactly what you asked for, but it's a personal accomplishment. In high school, I had a huge crush on Kim, but I was firmly friend-zoned. Her best friend, Amanda, actively disliked me and treated me poorly. Fast forward 2 years after graduation, I started working at an electronics retailer. Great purchase, only to find Amanda was my supervisor. Fortunately, she soon moved away. The next summer, Amanda's attractive mom, Paula, started working in my department. Knowing her casually from choir, I always got along well with adults. We worked together often, and I never pursued her, knowing she was married. One night, after work, a group of us were chatting. Paula revealed she'd been divorced for 2 years and hadn't been on a date. On impulse, I offered to take her out, and to my surprise, she accepted. I was thrilled at the thought of dating that difficult Amanda's mom. Our first date, dinner and a movie, Iron Man 2, went wonderfully. We connected deeply, and she even snuggled close during the film. Afterward, we talked for another 2 hours by the roadside. Despite feeling a strong pull, I hesitated to kiss her, doubting her interest given our age difference. The next day, she showed up at my house, pulled me in for an amazing kiss, and our brief, intense relationship began. We texted constantly. I learned she lived with her cruel alcoholic veteran father, which caused her significant stress and depression. About a month in, she spent the night. Our physical connection was incredible. 3 weeks later, while cuddling, her phone rang. It was Amanda. I overheard Amanda screaming about us, then Paula admitted our involvement, even enthusiastically adding how awesome it was. Amanda exploded. Paula left amidst the yelling. I was both sad it ended and secretly pleased Amanda found out. We stopped seeing each other. I later learned my sister had inadvertently revealed our secret to Kim, who then told Amanda. Looking back, I'm glad it ended. Paula was dealing with intense personal issues, including alcoholism, a difficult home life, and a desire for more children. She later became pregnant by someone else, moved out from her father's, and even got a restraining order against him. While I don't miss the drama, I do recall the intense physical connection we shared. Story 4. His story might not be as exciting as some others, but it happened. My mom's friend was roughly between my mom's age and mine. We were at a large gathering, lots of people, and we all had quite a bit to drink. I ended up catching a ride home with his friend, but we didn't go to my place. We went to her apartment instead. The intimate part wasn't fantastic, but she was incredibly skilled. Both agreed to never speak of it, but I'm certain my mom found out. She's dropped a few pretty clear hints that she knows what transpired. She's still friends with the woman, and it's incredibly awkward. I just say, hey, X, and then walk away whenever I see her with my mom. Story 5. Hi. When I was a teenager, I just discovered that having a car significantly boosted my social life. For my teenage self, that was the greatest summer ever. Not only did I lose my V card, but also had many intimate encounters in the backseat of my 81 Cutlass Supreme. I connected with one particularly spirited blonde, a truly striking person. She was a bit rebellious, came from a challenging home, and often found herself in trouble. Deep down, I sensed she'd be exciting. Let's call her Christina. Anyway, I was working at the local grocery store where her mother, Catherine, was one of the cashiers. We often worked the closing shift together and were frequently the last two in the store as it was a small grocery. The store had a small restaurant area that closed in the evenings, which we used as a break room late at night. The restaurant staff hated that. This was back when smoking indoors was permitted, so that's what we did. We'd steal soda or coffee and just sit and smoke. Catherine and I started flirting a bit. It began one day when I decided to sit on the same side of the table as her. She kept steering the conversation toward me, her daughter, and adventurous experiences. Eventually, we were talking about her physique, which she assured me was still impressive, even for a mother. I believed her. She was very attractive and quite uninhibited. We'd started fooling around, and eventually things progressed in the deserted restaurant. Her physique was indeed very appealing, with no wrinkles, so after a private moment in the backseat one day, I dropped Christina off at home and left. Long story short, she had my pack of cigarettes, so I turned back. This was in the days of pagers, not cell phones. By the time I returned, she had left, presumably to meet someone else. Her mom completely invited me in, and I was quite interested. I was intimate with her on the couch, then the floor, then over the kitchen table, and then on the couch again. It was fantastic. The way she moved set a high standard for many future encounters. At this point, you might realize I was young at the time, and she was over 40. I don't feel exploited. I was the one initiating the encounters, and I was already an active teenager. I found nothing wrong with it, and it didn't leave me with any negative feelings. To this day, I still don't mind an older lady if she's fun and attractive. Nobody ever found out either. Story 6. I had a one-time intimate encounter with my friend's dad when I was a teenager, and it's probably the only time I don't regret such an experience. He was incredibly sweet and gentle. It was like a second father to me. Our families were close, and his daughter and I were inseparable, having sleepovers all the time growing up. He'd watch movies with us, build forts, and generally be there for us like an ideal dad. Then her mom passed away, and he seemed to fall apart. He was trying to hold it together for his daughter's sake, but he was truly on the verge of breaking down. We were having another sleepover with some other friends, and we tried to joke around with him, but he was still quite somber. I got up in the middle of the night for water, came down to the kitchen, and found him just sitting at the table, staring blankly. We chatted for a bit about silly things, like we used to, and then he started to break down. I hugged him, and things just escalated. I was okay with it, and I told him that since he had always been there for me, I would be there for him. Just for that night. He quietly repeated thank you over and over. I don't think it messed anything up permanently. None of us ever brought it up. My friend knew, though. Coming out of her dad's room at 6 a.m. to find her waiting was a pretty clear giveaway. She was upset at first, but she hugged me. After slapping me, of course. Things were shaky for a few weeks, and she'd randomly slap me over the next few months. Super epilogue mode. I ended up in a casual relationship with her for 7 years, and she still drags me over for Christmas dinner each year. Story 7. Yes, I have. My friend Jane is about 4 years younger than me. When I was a teenager, we actually started to hang out a bit. I was also friends with her mom, who was 10 years older than me by this time. I got kicked out of my place for reasons, so her mom let me crash in the living room for a couple weeks. After a few days of her mom forgetting that I was there and walking from the shower to her room, even though it had a door straight to the bathroom, I happened to walk back to ask her something. This was followed by a half-hearted, "Oh, crap, I thought you were dressed by now," followed by a long look at her. I said I was going to go smoke a cigarette, and she came out to the garage with a sundress. Then she sits in the dryer facing my chair to where I could obviously see. She got me looking, hopped off the dryer, and we did it in that piece of crap chair. And then a couple times a day while I lived there. Good times. Story 8. I'm dating my ex-girlfriend's mom, and we had intimacy last night. My ex-girlfriend and I broke up a while ago, and we both moved on. We started to identify as polyamorous and met a really sexy businesswoman at a food market. We chatted, became friends, and I learned she was in her late 30s while I was in my early 20s. I've always loved older women, so I never minded the age difference. We became friends with benefits, and she was warming up to the idea of me having other girlfriends. Soon, we fell in love. We started our boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and things were amazing. Everything just felt right. She was monogamous with me, as that's just who she is, and I was polyamorous with her. She also works crazy hours and has a very busy life, but she loves it, and that's what counts. Months passed, and she invited me to meet her family at a gathering. I was excited to meet her family, but not so excited and a little nervous to learn her ex-husband would be there. We walked through the door, and she introduced me to her daughter, who turned out to be my ex-girlfriend. My eyes went wide. My ex ran upstairs crying, and my girlfriend and ex-girlfriend started yelling at each other upstairs. My girlfriend's ex-husband was giving me glares for being with both his wife and daughter. I stood there awkwardly for 5 minutes, listening to my ex-girlfriend tell her mother it wasn't okay to have intimacy with her ex-boyfriend. The party ended up being pretty good despite that, but my ex-girlfriend was still quite mad at me, and her ex-husband and I avoided each other the whole time. My girlfriend has an awesome family, and we're still happy together. Story 9. I actually had an intimate encounter with my ex-girlfriend's mom, if that counts. Backstory: my ex and I had broken up the day before. Her mom, who always referred to me as her future son-in-law, called me to ask what happened. I explained briefly and mentioned I needed to pick up a few things from their house. She told me to come over since my ex was out with friends for a few hours. I arrived and she sat me down and we started talking about the breakup. She offered me a glass of wine. Being a teenager at the time, I wasn't going to say no. After the third glass, the conversation got a little flirtatious, and the next thing I knew, she asked if she could kiss me. I was pretty buzzed, depressed, and at that moment, quite turned on. She kissed me, and before I knew it, we were in her bedroom, getting intimate. The best part was when my ex came home and walked in on us, and her mom just screamed, "Go to your room!" Story 10. I did. Here's how it went. My little brother, who was 4, was babysat by my best friend's mom. She was 35, had short, dirty blonde hair, and was in great shape. Most days after school, I would go to their house and skate with my friend. At 5 p.m., I'd take my little brother back to our home, which was a few blocks away. My friend had karate twice a week, and I'd usually just chill at their house in an upper-middle-class neighborhood, playing Nintendo while he was gone. At some point, his mom started offering to massage my back while I played. I let her do it and thought nothing of it. One day, she started reaching around a bit, so she asked me if we should move somewhere more comfortable where she could massage me a bit more. I said sure, and we went to her room. Within 5 minutes, it was on. The oddest phrases came out of that lady. I asked her if she thought Jesus would be mad at us, and she said she thought Jesus would want her to be happy. That passed my teenager logic test, so we kept going. For the next 5 days, we were intimate at her house, mine, in the car, and really anywhere we could get the chance. She even had it set up where she could sign me out of school. She was close with my mom, so she did one day, and we had more or less an all-day romp. She offered me a few $100s, saying it was so we could take a vacation to get away from everything. I took it. I also told my older brother since I couldn't contain myself any longer. He immediately told my mom that she had threatened to take me, and my mom told my dad, who then called the cops. She was charged and sentenced to a few hundred hours of community service in order to pay for me to see a psychiatric counselor for a year. My friends all found out. She told them, and it caused a large faction of people at my school to be angry with me. I have no idea why. Story 11. I was friends with this guy. We'd hang out at his place, smoking and drinking beer, watching movies. I was a bartender, and his dad used to come into the bar and flirt with me. One night, a few of us went back to their place after my shift and had some more beers. I got quite intoxicated and went to the dad's bedroom to pass out and sleep it off. Later that night, he joined me and did stuff for a while, then we had intimacy. I left the next morning. This happened a few times, and once he even came over to my place. I told him I wasn't interested in a relationship, and he was fine with that. Eventually, I had to end it, and he wasn't happy about it. He would call me, talking about how much he missed me. He'd send me emails. It was fun at the time, but it just had to end eventually. Good memories, though. I'm pretty sure his son knew. I never talked about it, but his bedroom is across the hall from his dad's, and I'm not known for being quiet, especially if I've been drinking. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 12. Dear Reddit, I never thought this would happen to me. I was a senior in high school. My best friend's mom was a lunch lady at the same school. My friend had started dating a girl, and his time for hanging out with us had diminished greatly. One day, I went to his house to drop off a gift and ended up chatting with his mom in the kitchen while waiting for him. She started accidentally bumping into me. He came home, luckily, just as things had settled down. A few days later, she called me, wanting to meet and talk about what happened. We met in a back road and ended up making out in the back seat of my car. She gave me a bracelet she usually wore and kissed me goodbye. I was at work at a fast food job when my friend came in. He saw the bracelet and asked me about it. I gave him some excuse and told him I'd explain later. I got my first speeding ticket on the way to his house that night. I felt terrible about the whole thing. I explained things to him. He asked me to leave, and our friendship was ruined. There were some calls between his mom and me, but we weren't going to meet again. Her husband intercepted one of the calls, contacted my parents, and they kicked me out. I called her again and let her know I was now living at a motel and that her husband knew about our conversations. She showed up about a few hours later with all their things packed. We finally consummated the relationship, ended up getting an apartment together, and lived with each other for about a year. I was a hot-headed punk kid who didn't know how to treat a woman right. I ended up doing a lot of things that drove wedges between her and her family. She kicked me out after putting up with some serious nonsense from me, her ex-husband, and her 5 children. I did my best to stay out of my ex-friend's way, detouring whenever I saw him. As I grew older and wiser, I realized the full extent and gravity of my mistakes. Fast forward to our 20th class reunion. This was the first reunion I attended and the first time I'd seen most of my graduating class. I tried to avoid my ex-friend, but at one point I felt a hand grab my shoulder. He called my name and told me to wait a second. He asked how I was doing, and I returned the courtesy. I explained that I would leave if my presence made him uncomfortable. He said, "Don't worry about it. That stuff that happened with my mom and dad would have happened whether you were there or not." I bought him a beer that night, and we chatted a little more. Nothing too heavy or personal. We've since connected on Facebook. I've been to his business and talked briefly to one of his brothers. Things are cool, but we will never have the friendship that we lost. Story 13. I was 22. I just had my first kid and had broken up with her mom, leaving me pretty depressed. My friend's mom was that one, the woman all my friends found attractive. She had an amazing body and a really pretty face, often wearing bikinis to the beach and pool. I hang out with the family occasionally, and then my friend's mom started coming over to my place to smoke. One night, my friend, his girlfriend, his mom, and I all went to the movies. She kept hugging me and taking every opportunity. I felt a little uncomfortable for my friend, but at the same time, she was genuinely hot. I tried to just laugh it off, but after the movie, when I needed a ride home and she volunteered, I started to suspect something. It wasn't until she was hugging me goodbye that I knew it was going to happen. She wasn't letting go, so when she leaned back, I moved in and kissed her for a couple of minutes. She called the next day and said, "That was weird because you're my son's friend." I replied with conviction, "Not weird at all. I thought it was great." She then came over in less than an hour. We started being intimate a couple of times a week. After about a month, my friend came over at the same time she was there for our encounter. He started talking about the time we all went to Mexico and I slept with his sister, her stepdaughter. She gave me a stare and I casually said, "Oh, yeah." After he left, I clarified, "We just made out a little." She didn't really care and we proceeded. We continued for about 2 months until her husband started to suspect something, and he's a big ex-Marine. I also started getting back together with my kid's mom, so I called it off. She was really bummed, and so was I, but nothing lasts forever. Story 14. I experienced what some might call the Holy Grail, a mother-daughter triad. I was in my mid-40s, the daughter was in her early 20s and used to work for me, and her mom was living with her. At the time, I had stopped being a manager in my company, and due to the nature of my new job, the daughter had a reason to call me for help with something. However, it was clearly an excuse, as she had been very interested in me while she worked under my supervision. I received an invitation to her house to fix the problem. Afterwards, she started coming on to me, and we had intimacy. Needless to say, she was very into it. When we were done, she basically said she had something to do, so I got dressed and left. The following day, she called and asked if I could come over again, claiming the problem wasn't fixed. Whatever. I already knew it was about intimacy, and I agreed. I showed up, and her mom, about my age, was there too. So I figured it genuinely was about the problem and not intimacy. As I began fixing the issue, her mom started doing intimate stuff. She then asked me if I'd ever had a triad. I nervously mumbled, "Yeah." She then asked if I wanted to do it again. At this point, I was genuinely thinking, what the hell is going on here? My mind was racing, and honestly, I didn't think she was serious about doing it right then with her daughter, whom I'd been intimate with just 2 days prior. She then yelled, "Get in here!" Daughter's name? Evidently, they had planned this all ahead of time, so it happened. To be honest, the daughter was quite attractive, about a 7 out of 10. The mom, not so much. She had a very thin, almost emaciated body that wasn't particularly appealing. Doable, in the sense of at least she's not overweight. After all that, I discovered her mom was actually using substances. Not only that, this wasn't their first time. They had done this in the past when both of them were on it. Evidently, the daughter had gone clean at some point. A few days later, the daughter called me and we went out for coffee. We talked and she said she wanted me to be her boyfriend and that she wanted a chance to be a good girlfriend to me. It was sensory overload. How in the hell was I going to start a relationship with someone after all that mess? No way. I told her it wasn't going to work out and we shouldn't see each other again. She called a few times after that, but I never answered her calls again. Story 15. Yes, I have. I was taking a gap year between high school and college. I used to teach piano to my buddy Jay's 2 younger sisters, who were around 5 and 7 years old. I go to their house right as the girls got home from school, and their mom usually arrived shortly after. Jay had already left for college, so it was just his mom and sisters at the house. I don't want to boast, but I think I'm pretty good with kids. Sweet yet firm, and I encouraged them even when they made mistakes. Jay's mom complimented me on this one day after a lesson. She was going to pay me, but didn't have cash on her. Joking, she quickly added, "Is there any other way I could pay you?" Lol. She said it so fast and I could tell her brain immediately signaled, "Nah, don't chance it." But I didn't let it go. She was extremely attractive, and all of Jay's friends thought so too. She was a free spirit with beautiful blonde hair and green eyes. "What did you have in mind?" I asked, with a slight smile, though I was nervous as hell. "Oh, I just, thought maybe since it was just you and me." At that moment, even though her face was still red, there was no turning back. I got up as smoothly as I could and walked over to her. She was on me so fast that we didn't have time to be awkward, practically sprinting to the bedroom. The sisters were downstairs playing with Legos or some cool stuff. Anyway, we finished up, and as I was in the kitchen putting my shoes on, she asked, "So, same time next week?" No, my friend never found out. Story 16. I almost had an intimate encounter with my mate's mom. I didn't know she was his mom at the time, but we'd been flirting for about 4 hours at a barbecue. We started getting intimate when my mate walked into the living room, saw us, and calmly said, "Mom, what are you doing?" As soon as I heard "Mom," I evacuated the situation. She was a very, very attractive 48-year-old and knew it. She and her husband had split. I apologized profusely to my mate over the next few weeks, and he told me his mom said she wanted to sleep with me. He genuinely didn't care. About a week after this, she flat out asked me in her husky cougar voice, "Are we going to be intimate?" I said no. The funny thing was, when my mate asked me why, and I blurted out, "Rose before," which was out of line. He got really angry at that. Story 17. I have this friend, let's call him T. He's that guy whose life is such a mess that it makes you feel better about yourself. One day he came to my house, absolutely terrified, rambling about a guy who was going to end him. After about 10 minutes, he calmed down enough to explain what happened. About 2 years prior, he was at his friend Kay's house, partying when things got pretty heated between T and Kay's sister. To make a long story short, he ended up sleeping with her and angering his friend Kay so badly that he had to start avoiding places where Kay might be. Okay, I thought. That was 2 years ago. What's the big deal now? It was at this point that T told me that Kay's mom was at his, T's, mom's birthday party. He somehow ended up sleeping with her too. Word got around, not only to Kay, but also to Kay's dad. Kay's dad ended up driving around with a gun looking for T. Nothing really came of it except that T went to live with some relatives in another part of the state. Story 18. I wouldn't say he was a friend, just an acquaintance or coworker. I worked in a call center with this guy. His mother eventually applied and got hired as well. Both he and his mother worked a level below me, but I wasn't a manager or anything. Turns out his mother used to own a corn shop and was an ex-dancer. After a couple of weeks, she was constantly asking me for help and hitting on me. She could actually flex her melons, which was quite amazing. She would stare at me across the floor late at night when few people were working and flex for me. After a few weeks of her flirting, I told her she needed to stop because it was putting images in my head. She said, "Sorry, I just know what I want and I go after it." 2 nights later, while her son was out with his girlfriend, I went over and we had intimacy that night. What was truly awkward was that she told me she had discussed it with her son before I even came over, and he was cool with it. Next time I saw him at work, he asked me if I had fun. I said, "Yep," and everything was cool. Story 19. When I was in college, I went to the same 2 bars basically every other night. One time, I was at this bar and I was getting intoxicated, and this older 40s woman was getting intoxicated with us. Just out of nowhere, she walked in and started drinking tequila shots and buying us all drinks. Nobody knew who she was. Long story short, I ended up closing down the bar with her, and then she invited a few of us back to her hotel room. We're all drinking and partying, her and I and 2 guys and one of the guys' girlfriends. Next thing you know, they're making out. Then one of the guys passes out on one of the beds. The couple decides to go home, and I'm too intoxicated to drive, so she asks if I want to crash there. Well, the other guy had gone up on his bed, so I shared a bed with her, and as soon as I lay down, we had intimacy. That woman had me ready to go in like 5 seconds. It was freaking hot as hell. Anyway, 2 days later at a barbecue for some friends, I realized she was the mom of a guy I was very close friends with on my floor. Whoops. My other friend was like, dude. I had no idea. I just thought she liked to party. She was insanely good. She knew crap I'm not sure any woman since then has, and it's been 15 years. Story 20. Totally going to get married, but here's my disclaimer. I'm female and I had connections with everyone involved, so I got pretty deep into this. 2 good friends of mine, both male, let's call them B and D, grew up together from kindergarten to high school. You know, the best friends forever type of relationship. B's parents went through a divorce when he was about 13. B's mom was a massage therapist. B and D hung out a lot. B's mom started helping D with his sports injuries. I feel like I should have known something weird was going on. D was always at B's house, even when B wasn't there. But they were such good friends and D's home life wasn't great, so I didn't think anything of it. Turns out B's mom and D were having a pretty intense relationship. It really messed B up when he caught them a few months later. B moved away to stay with his dad for his last year of high school, beat the absolute mess out of D in a fight, and then never spoke to him again. One of B's friends ended up telling a few people and the story got around the school. Too bad D had already graduated. His sister ended up getting all the grief for it. The really disturbing thing for me was that not only did D do this to his friend, but B's mom had known him since he was about 5. She practically helped raise him. Story 21. Okay, I think this counts. This didn't happen to me, but the story is epic enough that it shouldn't matter. In high school, our band director had 2 young sons with his wife, who was about 45 and also a French teacher at the school. The band's drum major, 18, became good friends with the band director, almost like a mild father-son relationship. There was definitely a strong bond of trust, especially during extended band trips and while working closely together. They were, without a doubt, friends. I knew the drum major, but we weren't close. Right around Christmas, it came out that the drum major had been having an affair with the band director's wife for the past year. Things got wild. The band director took a leave of absence and wasn't seen for a few weeks. The drum major dropped out of school. The wife, who was the French teacher, quit her job, and she and the drum major are still together. They even started a restaurant in town, which later failed. A few years later, I dated the band director's new girlfriend's daughter, and it was always awkward when the ex-wife would show up with her 20-year younger boyfriend to pick up the kids for the weekend. I'll make a half-hearted attempt to find proof later today. It was a small town, so there might be something in the local newspaper about it. Story 22. I'm not proud to admit that I'm among those who have crossed the taboo line of having an intimate relationship with a friend's mom. I was a teenager at the time. She was 36, I believe. She was still married, but in the process of getting a divorce. We met by chance while I was out, had some drinks, and things just happened. We swore we'd never tell anyone, and I kept my word until it no longer mattered. Soon after, I needed a place to live, and a close friend offered me a spare couch. The problem was, he still lived with his mom, and I honestly tried to avoid her at all costs. I was weak, and when push came to shove, I gladly offered alternatives for paying my rent. Everything was fine until she showed up at my work, looking for her son, but she was acting so strangely and obviously that rumors quickly started flying in our small town. Her husband confronted me at a gas station and demanded the truth, which, of course, I couldn't give him. But one day not long after, while we were smoking, my friend looked over and asked me the dreaded question, "So, did you have intimacy with my mom?" At that point, I couldn't lie anymore, so I came clean to him. We're still close friends to this day. Now, I'm married with a daughter, but I remember her fondly. Since what happened between us has become common knowledge, I keep as much distance as possible. Story 23. My girlfriend's mom and OBGYN shared a truly wild story. She told us about a mother who set her teenage daughter up with a teenage boy she had recently met. The mom made arrangements for the two, and one night the boy showed up on his motorcycle to pick up her daughter. The mom, somewhat understandably, stated she wanted to ensure the boy was a safe driver. She asked him to give her a quick ride around the neighborhood. The mom hopped in the back of the motorcycle, and off they went. Upon their return, the mom objected, insisting she needed to know how he drove on the highway. Long story short, they drove off to the beach, leaving the daughter behind at home. They had intimacy, the mom got pregnant, and roughly 9 months later, my girlfriend's mom delivered a baby conceived under the most ridiculous circumstances she'd heard in a very long time. Story 24. I almost had an intimate encounter with my best friend's somewhat attractive mom. My friend threw an 18th birthday party at his house, and his mom was there. I ended up completely intoxicated and was about to have intimacy with some girl in his mom's bed. However, when the moment came, I ran to the bathroom, retched everywhere, and passed out. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but my best friend's mom woke me up at about 4 a.m. Almost everyone else was either passed out or gone, except for a few guys downstairs. When she got me up, she was also incredibly intoxicated and tried to take me to her bed. Thankfully, my booze-addled brain was sobering up, and I refused before I ruined a relationship. Everyone found out, and I still joke about it with him all the time. Story 25. Yes, I was house-sitting for a friend's mom for an extended period. Every 2 weeks, she'd return for a weekend to regroup. During one of these evenings, she brought home a couple of bottles of wine and cooked the best peppercorn steak I've ever tasted. We ate and drank until there wasn't a drop of wine or a morsel of steak left. She then excused herself to take a shower. As I was cleaning, she called for me, which was quite bizarre at the time. I came to the open door and, being polite, stood to the side and asked what she needed. She replied that she had run out of shampoo and asked me to grab the spare bottle under the sink. Being so close to the shower, this request immediately raised my suspicion. As soon as I rounded the corner, the curtain was pulled back, and, well, the rest is history. I have to conclude the story by saying that, to this day, it was the best intimate encounter and the best steak I've ever had. Story 26. My old roommate would sleep with pretty much any girl who would let him, some of whom he brought home are quite unkempt. One night he didn't come home, but he showed up the next day, being driven by this unkempt older lady. He was all proud that he had bagged his first cougar. He went on 2 more dates with her, bringing her back to our place. On the 3rd date, he went to her place sober this time. He saw a family picture in the wall of her and one of our high school friends. The way he tells it, he asked how she knew him. She told him, and he turned around and left without another word. Story 27. Yes, I actually have. I'm a guy, and my then female roommate had her mom come stay with us for a while. Her mom, a biologist living out of the country, was taking a hiatus for hurricane season. My roommate and I had known each other since junior high. Her mom was always the cool single mom throughout high school. Now that we were in our 20s, we could all go out to bars together, and her mom was like a sister mom with her daughters. We always had a great time. One evening, I decided to call it a night around midnight, and my roommate's mom asked if she could catch a ride home with me. We got back to the house, and I said I was going to take a shower, then go to bed. She took my hand and asked if I'd like some company. I was completely taken by surprise. She later confided that she had noticed me from around a teenager and had always felt guilty about being attracted to one of her daughter's friends. She never said or did anything, but now that I was 22 and she was 45, we were consenting adults. I accepted her offer and we ended up dating and having intimate encounters for several more weeks until she had to go home. Her daughters thought highly enough of me that they were okay with us being together. She got adventurous after her daughter's endorsement, and I learned a lot in the bedroom. It was awesome. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.